I'd like to call to order the regular city council meeting for today, April 7th. Roll call, please.
Lessem.
Here.
Fuller.
Here.
Janser.
Here.
Olson. Here. Pittner.
Here.
Samuelson.
Here.
Let's join in the Pledge of Allegiance. In the mayor's report tonight, I have some proclamations. And the first of those is as follows. Whereas Minot's Bishop Ryan Catholic School is a private Roman Catholic educational institution established in 1958 with the motto of inspired minds, faithful hearts, lives of virtue, and provides a foundational religious education to its students as well as extracurricular opportunities and lifelong lessons to students, faculty, and staff members. And whereas Bishop Ryan Catholic School has a storied history of excelling in athletic competition, including winning district, regional, and state titles in different sports, including winning the 2025 State Class B Boys Basketball Championship on March 22nd. Now therefore do I, Mark Janser, Acting Mayor of Minot, hereby proclaim April 8th, 2025 as Bishop Ryan Boys Basketball Team Appreciation Day and encourage Minot residents to recognize and celebrate the team for its championship season and its commitment to excellence in not only sports, but in providing outstanding religious education opportunities for students in the Minot area.
Guys, proud of all of you.
Thank you very much.
You should. Nice job.
Oh, my kid.
Our second proclamation today is as follows. Whereas April is designated as the month of the military child to highlight the important role military children play throughout the armed forces community, and whereas the 2024-2025 school year includes the 38th anniversary of the month of the military child, which was established in 1986 by former Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger. And whereas the City of Minot has created a strong relationship with the men and women of Minot Air Force Base that benefits our community, our region, our state, and our great nation. And whereas military families and their children continue to make our community a more diverse, stronger, and more resilient place to call home, find successful careers, and raise a family. And whereas the City of Minot encourages area schools, administrators, teachers, and staff members to recognize military children and to stress the importance of providing children of military families with quality education opportunities services, and support to help them achieve success during their years in the mobile military lifestyle. Now therefore, I, Mark Janser, acting mayor of the city of Minot, do hereby proclaim April as Month of the Military Child in the city of Minot, and urge all residents to recognize the important role that military families serve in the continued protection of our country, and to applaud military families and their children for the sacrifices and challenges they overcome on a daily basis while a family member serves in the armed forces.
We stood for the basketball.
I know, that's what I was thinking, same thing.
Aww. She's only 5. Yeah. It's awesome.
Kayla, get up.
So I don't need to do
But we're gonna clap. We're gonna clap.
Right. Can we make one more? More row in the front.
Oh, we'll sit down for this, and we'll stand up when we clap the next time.
Okay. I'm missing these people. And then just a little closer.
Thank you. It's great to have all those young people here. Our next proclamation is as follows. Whereas Leif Aaron Snyder was born in Minot on April 17th, 1973, and spent his life as an active member of the Minot community in many ways, including through coaching hockey, his various places of employment, and having a soft spot in his heart for all animals and their protectors. And whereas Leif was a tireless advocate for his fellow North Dakotans, most notably the residents of Minot, and was a willing and supportive voice for those with disabilities, whom he encouraged to pursue their dreams and goals despite any hardships brought on by disabilities. Now therefore do I, Mark Janser, acting mayor of Minot, North Dakota, hereby proclaim April 17th, which I believe was Leif's birthday, as Leif Snyder Appreciation Day, and encourage Minot residents to live life like Leif by not worrying about what other people think of you for doing the right thing, never passing up an opportunity to speak up for yourself, utilizing your time wisely by never taking life for granted, standing strong in your values, never turning away from someone in need, always cherishing life, committing to making life better for others, and loving your community through your actions, your thoughts, your ideas, and your words, or as Leif was fond of saying, hear me out. And Leaf's family was not able to be here tonight, and so we are making sure that the original of the proclamation gets to them. So thank you very much. Also under the mayor's report, I want to update the citizens, the council, and city employees that even with the abrupt transition of 6 days ago, most of the sorting out has occurred, and there isn't any question as to the continuity of city government. I think we're in pretty good shape. I want to especially thank Harold, Michaela, Dave, Tom, Anna, Paul, and IT, as well as the some council members for your assistance in dealing with the emails, schedules, the bank stuff, and obligations that the mayor has, which we are going to make sure are covered. I'd like to talk to city employees for just a second, who, by the way, have been hard at work through all these recent events, and probably feel a little like if they were kids on a playground minding their own business, when somebody using really poor judgment jumps into a nearby mud puddle. Everyone gets hit with some mud undeservedly. It's not your fault. And I think to paint the city with one brush of blame is unfair to the extent that any of you are feeling that. And I want to say I'm sorry. Thank you for continuing to provide city services at a high level. And we elected officials need to lead by example and be held to a high standard. And that's what I expect. I also want to thank the many people who have reached out from across the community, the state, and beyond to offer support as we move forward in these next days. Whether former city aldermen, state officials, or leaders from our key partners in the community like Minot State, Minot Air Force Base, Chamber EDC, Minot Public Schools, Ward County, and state government. Thank you for your help and reassurance. I see what I have witnessed before in Minot. When faced with a challenge or a crisis, the Minot community comes together and succeeds. I'm grateful for seeing that again in these circumstances. On a personal note, know that I am able and willing to serve in this job of mayor as long as desired by council and or the citizens. We now need to get back to work, hold ourselves accountable, and do the city's business. I thank my fellow council members, city employees, and our citizens for your understanding and support. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is number 4, the city manager's report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. First and foremost, before I get into a question that I'd ask for some feedback from council on, I'd ask if there's any questions with regards to the city manager report and memo that's included in the packet. If not, one item that I would like to have some conversation with the council on and receive some feedback, and that is that here a couple weeks ago, we concluded our first round of neighborhood communication meetings. We did 4 of them. We divided them up into the different sectors of the community. I think that, and I appreciate the staff that dedicated their time and preparation in being there and being available for those. citizen participation picked up with each meeting, but tonight I wanted to ask for feedback from the council on how you felt those went, and if there's anything that we as staff can do to help make those more successful going forward, so that we can increase our interactions and our communication with our citizens. And so I just wanted to open up and provide an opportunity for any feedback that the council may have at this time, because we have these scheduled and slated again in June. And we'll be covering some significant topics like the budget itself, which we'll be in the middle of at that point. We'll be covering construction projects that will be going on throughout the community through the construction season this year. We'll be covering updates on flood control and where that's at in its project and financing and those kinds of things. So those are just a couple of highlights that we have coming in June. But again, I wanted to open it up for any feedback that the council may have with regards to the value, the effectiveness, and in ways that we can improve citizen engagement through those opportunities.
Council members, thoughts? Alderman Blessing.
Thank you, Acting Mayor, I guess we'll go with. Harold, I guess I've really appreciated the sessions. I was able to make it to 3 of the 4. I guess the main thing that I would say is that city staff certainly put a lot of effort into that. And we saw that through both the work that was done to prepare the presentations, the information that was given at each one, and through staff being there. And that's a big deal. And what I would ask now is that the community come and join us, because certainly they got better as they went. I think the downtown one maybe was the best attended, at least in my feeling. But I think we're all looking for engagement. We're all looking for those opportunities to hear from the public about where they would like to see things go. And I think this is a great way to do that. And so I'm looking forward to the next set. I think it's a good way for us to hear from the public, and a great way for the city to get across some of the information that it needs to.
Alderman Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Echoing Mike, I think the city did a good job. I really do. I mean, the employees were there. The questions that needed to get answered got answered. Again, I'm going to be like Mike, challenge the community to come out and interact with us, give us input, because, that's where we want to hear feedback. We want to see what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and just interact with the community. So the only other thing I ever heard during all of it was that some folks weren't aware, like not enough notice type thing. So I say we just pound it out there for the next 2 months so everybody's aware of when they all are, and hopefully they'll join us.
Alderman Olson.
Thank you. I guess I would add in, I've noticed, particularly over the last 6 or 7 days, there are a lot of questions that the residents have, and they pose a lot of those questions to our PIO staff. So maybe we put out a survey and ask, what are they looking for? I mean, I think it was good to start this out with some prepared presentations, but maybe we don't know what we don't know. And if they can pose some questions to us, it might kind of help staff focus in on what we need to address. And I would just add in there too, I think all of us were at least a few of the meetings. Some of us were able to make it to all. We want to visit. We want to hear from you. We want to see you face to face. We can read social media comments all day long, but to have a conversation just is so much more fruitful. And so I encourage people to come out as well.
I guess my own thoughts were that it was a good start, and the hope would be that as we continue with additional meetings, that the attendance and the enthusiasm of the citizens will build, and we'll end up with more engagement. So I think we should go ahead with the ones in June, and tweak it as we go, so to speak. But I think that certainly wouldn't advise giving up at this point. Does that kind of get you what?
Yeah, I think so.
Needed
I
city manager.
appreciate the feedback.
Anybody else have any comments they want to make? Scott?
I agree with everything that's been said here. I do think that we want the community to be engaged. The only thing that I would ask as we move forward is to be able to, try to see if we can't fill a room, and that means maybe a little bit more space to get people engaged and stuff, so that would be my only thought. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the feedback. Staff will discuss those and see what we can do for that. And I have nothing further under this item.
Okay. All right. With that, we'll move on to 4.2, the city attorney's report. City attorney?
Acting Mayor and Council, I submitted a written report and can stand for any questions at this time.
Any questions of the city attorney? Okay, seeing none, that report will stand as accepted, and we'll move on to item 5. Item 5 is a public hearing on a special use permit for additional animals being requested. The recommended action is that the council approve the special use permit to allow one additional animal at 3100 11th Avenue Southeast, Lot A 47. This is an opportunity for anybody who is in favor or against this special permit to speak at this time. Anybody wish to speak about the extra animal permit? Seeing none, what are the wishes of the council? Alderman Fuller.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing and proceed with the recommendation of the staff.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question.
Did he hit the manual one? Did you hit the manual vote? The e-vote? The motion passed unanimously.
Next is item number 6. This is consent items. I have been asked to pull item 6.09, 6.16, 6.20, and 6.21. Are there any other items that need to be pulled? Alderman Blessing, were you?
No, I was just going to make a motion to accept the remaining items.
Second.
Okay. All right, moved and seconded to approve the remaining items. Record your vote.
Motion passed unanimously.
Okay, that will take us then to item 6.09, which is the Perkett Ditch Improvements Award of Bid. What are the wishes of the council?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Paul, seconded by Alderman Fuller. Discussion. I'm not sure who pulled this.
So I pulled it.
Okay, go ahead, Rob.
Thank you. The reason I pulled this, and I think I can talk about 6.9 and 6.16 at the same time because they both have to do with flood control. The reason I pulled them was just to start having the discussion because as we all learned last week, the state is dwindling our flood control money from 125 million down to 65 million. We don't know, that can change. I know we have a meeting down there later this week, if I'm not mistaken, so hopefully some of that'll change. But again, we have a bid that came in 46% over budget, or over what we estimated with the Perkett Ditch thing. And we're looking to buy a house or a property, which we probably aren't gonna do anything with for the next 10 years until we get to that portion of the flood control. So I'm just wondering, again, and I know we have to do these things, but the flood control project all of a sudden is gonna start to slow down quite a bit because of the money if we don't get any more. I had a long conversation with Jason Sorensen today and we talked about a number of these things. The money we are spending here is crazy. And I understand it has to be done. But again, if the state's not gonna take our flood control project seriously, I think we need to look at every single dollar that we're spending and make sure it needs to be spent right now on this item exactly. Again, I know the Perkett Ditch thing is awarded and good. That's fine, but we paid 46% over what they estimated for that. It isn't going to get cheaper as it goes down the road. We've all kept saying that. So we ultimately have to come up with some ideas and solutions, but I just wanted to pull these so we could start the conversation because as I was told over the weekend by one of our state legislators, first they said we weren't spending all the money that we had, and I told them that's not true. We've spent every dime. It might be sitting there, but it's contracted. It takes time to spend that money. And then the next thing out of their mouths were, well, you guys can't get all the contractors like they can in Fargo or the Red River project or whatever else. And that really hit home to me because that says to me that they're prioritizing Fargo and some of the other ones that can get contractors there, whereas they're saying we can't. So I don't know that any of that's true. I don't know that I believe any of it. But if they're going to start cutting the flood control funding, how are we going to pay these exorbitant prices for the flood control projects as they come up? So that's all I really had on both of those.
Okay, further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call a question.
The motion passed unanimously.
Okay, that takes us to 6.16, the home purchase that was alluded to in the previous conversation. What are the wishes of the council?
Move approval.
By Lisa,
Second.
by Alderman Blessam. Discussion. Seeing none, I presume we're ready to vote. Let's call the question.
Motion passed unanimously.
6.20 is the PSAP organizational restructuring and pay grade realignment. What are your wishes?
I'll move approval, Mr. Mayor.
By Mike, second by Paul. Discussion.
I ask that this one be pulled, Mr. Mayor. Chief Kelly, if you wouldn't mind coming up. The main reason I wanted to pull this one is I think this is a real good story. And so I wanted the chief to come up and talk about this a little bit. Some of the findings that we had coming out of one of our investigations was that we needed to make some adjustments in the dispatch center. And Chief, I know you've been working hard on that along with your team. And I asked you to come forward and just tell us a little bit about the process and how you got to where we are.
Mayor, members of council, first of all, I'd like to thank City Manager Stewart for his trust in me to be able to assist in dispatch, as well as the assistance from Assistant City Manager Joyce and Lieutenant Chapman. It has been quite a learning experience for me. I was always an end user of a radio, and so I have a greater appreciation for what happens down in dispatch. So the first things we did is we did one-on-ones. I met with each of the staff, and we talked about lots of different things. And what I did is I compiled all the information, and we broke it down to training, operations, different things that can be different in the facility, administration, culture, and shifts. We took all that and we've met as a team and we kind of broke it down, little things we could do, the low-hanging fruit that we could, make somebody happy by changing up the pop machine or something silly like that. But they make a difference. And so all the way to the other things, the bigger things. We've created a couple working groups to look at the schedule. The schedule was quite a point for a lot of people, a point of contention. And we're working very hard to come up with a solution to the shifts that everyone can agree with. We've also put together a working group to look at policies and procedures. We have written and adopted a few and put into play, but there's quite a few that need to be written. So we put together a working group to do that. Before we put that working group together, we also sent 3 different groups to the different centers in the state to be able to visit with them, to see what they do, to ask how do they do their breaks, how do they do their shifts. And they've come back with some great information and shared with a lot of us. And we've compiled that information to be able to see what everybody likes and how we can implement some of the findings. They went to Williston, Grand Forks, and Fargo, as well as to Bismarck, and seen the Bismarck one, as well as to State Radio. We put together times that we could get together in a month, so we've had 2 monthly shift meetings with everybody, and those have been very productive. We do a training component while we're there, as well as seeing how things are going and making sure they're well aware of what's happening in the center and the direction that we're going. Personnel-wise, we renamed the lead dispatchers to shift supervisors. It seems like they weren't really utilized as supervisors so much, so we've started empowering them to be more involved in, developmental counseling. We got them some training. We did bring them into training with their firefighters. That was a leadership training, all-day leadership training that was really good for them, of real good basic, down and dirty, how to do some developmental counseling with people. We're also going to be bringing in training for the whole center, and that is going to be doing it's called a DISC assessment, or some sort of assessment, personality assessment. So not only can they find out about themselves, but about how they work with others. There's a reason why there's conflict, and usually it's a personality thing. So if we can understand where others are coming from, we can understand where those conflicts come from. Then we're going to be building upon those as we move forward. And she just disappeared there. We're going to be building on that training as we move forward and grow together as a team. We are taking applications currently for dispatcher. We did have a couple resignations of individuals that are going to be moving to other communities. And we are currently taking applications for shift supervisor too. So it's an exciting time, a lot of movement down there. We did get a couple more dispatchers involved in peer support. We are taking mental health very seriously down in that area also. And we're excited for them to be part of our team. And that budget, that has been a new, interesting time for me to learn about the budget and getting involved with the 911 coordinator and stuff like that. So that's kind of in a nutshell of what we've been doing down there. Do you have any questions for me?
So, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Blessing.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chief. That was exactly what I was looking for, and I appreciate your hard work and Harold, the entire team. It was a nice effort. I like that. Could you just specifically on this item? So what we're doing tonight is we're realigning a couple of positions. So can you just talk about that briefly for us?
Yes, Mayor, members of council. So tonight's request, when I was down there and just watching how things work, and interaction with staff at the leadership level, it was very apparent that the assistant director was doing more of the personnel side, and the director was doing all the systems side of it. And when, in the report, there was a lot of conflict because of that. And Wayne, the assistant director, has done a phenomenal job with the personnel and getting that moved in a direction with the new training plan, with all the coordination down there with the systems. And it just seemed that Margaret was moving towards the system side of it and just staying over in the system side. When we looked at other models, I reached out to Grand Forks as well as Fargo, and they have that same type of model. They had the director, and then they had what's called a data and systems coordinator, and they have 2 different focuses. And so we felt that model would work out best for us. And so we did a bunch of research with HR, as well as around the region on the pay structure and how we kind of structure it. At this point, we felt that having them the same level would be the best for right now. And be a direct report to myself, just to avoid any, movement over another. And so that's kind of where we came up with that plan as we bring for you today.
So if I can continue, Mr. Mayor.
Sure, go ahead.
Once again, Chief Kelly, I think this is all great, and I think it shows the strength that we have in our leadership group within the staff. And I just appreciate that so much, because you guys were able to take what were some black eyes in a report and turn them into a course of action that I really feel good about. And so I just want to say thank you again. And, I would urge my colleagues, I think this is the right plan. Let's move ahead with it.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions for Chief Kelly? Okay, seeing none. Discussion? Seeing none, we'll call a question.
Motion passed unanimously.
Our next item is 6.21, which is the Watermain replacement project. What are your wishes?
Move approval.
By Paul,
Second.
and by Scott. Discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I asked for this one to be pulled.
Okay, go ahead, Rob.
Thank you. The reason I asked for this one to be pulled, again, we had another local bidder that got beat by an out-of-state bidder. They've been talking about it. I think he got beat by 7 or 8%. Again, not trying to change that, but I think it's ultimately time as a city we start to have the discussion about a local contractor preference when it comes to jobs that don't include federal funds, that are infrastructure jobs within the city of Minot. There's actually, I did a lot of research, there's thousands of cities across this country that have a local bidder preference built into their procurement and project bidding policies. There's 3 reasons they do it. It boosts the local economy. Hiring local contractors ensures that the tax dollars circulate within our own community. It supports local businesses, it creates jobs, and it helps stimulate economic growth within our community. We talk about economic growth all the time, and we're sending our tax dollars out of the state. It also fosters accountability and transparency. Most local contractors are going to be more likely to be accountable to the community that they live in if there's an issue. And then it also helps build long-term community workforce. Like investing in our local contractors actually helps grow and strengthen the skilled labor workforce in Minot, North Dakota. So as we go further down the road, we get more skilled workers and more laborers to do the jobs so we don't have to hire them outside of the community. I had a discussion with Dave Lakefield. We sat down and started talking about it. And I think it's something we just need to look at. I would like to direct staff to honestly start with some language that they see as appropriate and could possibly work within our structure to see if it's something that we can talk about and see if it works for our community as well. If we don't start to prioritize our local contractors, in 5 to 10 years, we will have no local contractors around here. They're already starting to leave, retire, or whatever. And so if that happens, then we're going to be paying whatever anybody wants us to pay whenever they have to come over here and do the work. So that was why I pulled this one, and I'd like to see some movement with the city looking at some language to add to the procurement or bid policies.
Alderman Olson.
Oh, thank you, Acting Mayor. So I'm going to go back in time a little bit. I can't remember exactly the year, and perhaps Dave will be able to help remind me, but we had a procedure, a process that we went through. There was a committee that was established, and we looked at a buy local policy. And I sat on that committee at the time. I know that Dave sat on it at the time. We had representation from MEC EDC. And we had local business owners, and we sat and we discussed all of this. And the business owners said unanimously they did not want a preference. They want to be able to submit a bid, but they don't expect to have the preference. And they helped us create this policy. Now, I'm hoping that that policy is still being followed. It was step by step as to what city staff were supposed to do. And to my knowledge, it hasn't changed. But the policy is there. The conversations have been had. Maybe attitudes have changed in the last 4 or 5 years. I'm not sure. But we have tried this at least at one point and did create a policy. So maybe if there's clarification from staff on whether or not that's still being followed, that would be important. But I just wanted to reiterate that none of the business owners wanted or expected to have a preference.
Well, I mean, I respect that from what happened before, but that's not what we're hearing now. I mean, this has happened a number of times in the last 9-10 months since we've been on council, or since I've been on council. And so you're right, attitudes may have changed. People in the community maybe want to see something a little bit different. I mean, these folks, the people that work for them, they're paying the taxes that support this city, that support the projects. And we're honestly taking that money. And again, I'm not saying our preference policy says we have to give it to a local person. I don't mean that at all. But if we say, hey, under $1 million, a local is within 5% of the lowest bid, we have to consider that. If we say over $1 million, they're within 7 or 8% of the lowest bid, I think we have to consider that for certain reasons. Again, it's a good practice, and it wouldn't be happening in thousands of cities across this country if it wasn't important and didn't work. That's my point. Like, if they're doing it, why won't we look at it?
Alderman Blessam.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I want to call the question on this one so we can get the vote done, because I think we've got this in place, because I'd like to see a motion to direct staff, and then we can have that discussion and determine whether we want to move forward with additional work. So if
You're calling the question?
Yes.
All right, the question is called. Please record your vote.
Motion passed unanimously.
Okay, Alderman Fuller, if you
Yes.
have.
Thank you. I would like to direct the city staff to put language together for a local bid contractor preference, however they think it is appropriate. And so we can look at that language as a council and see if it's something we would like to implement in our city policy as far as procurement or bids go.
I'll second that.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Further discussion, Alderman Olson.
Thank you. So I'll certainly ask the question to city staff, whether it be city manager, city finance director, are we following the policy?
I'll defer to Dave as our finance director, since he seemed to be the one to participate when that was created.
Mr. President, members of the council, I believe it was 18 or 19 when we went through that, made a number of changes to our city procurement policy. That policy governs when we purchase goods to be used in the city. It does not address contracts. Contracts are governed by state law. One of the challenges, and I spoke with Alderman Fuller just a day or two ago in regards to this a little bit. We have some challenges because the geographical preference is forbidden under the federal procurement guidelines. So we can't do that with anything that involves federal funding. So that adds a layer of complexity. It's not just projects that have funding that are federal dollars up front, but it also involves projects that may have some federal dollars backstopping the funding, like some of our SRF loans that we participate in that give us low interest loans for infrastructure. So we'd have to make certain that we won't be tapping into those resources up front in the project. So there are some levels of complexity that come along with this. Certainly, it's something we can look into and reevaluate and bring it forward to the council for consideration. But there are some things that we would have to address and develop into the policy as well.
Alderman Blessing.
Yeah, so just to follow Dave, to make sure I had it straight, did you say for goods, there is a policy that's in place today that does give us some way to do something along these lines, but nothing on the service side? Did I catch that right?
Mr. President, Alderman Blessam, we address it in the procurement policy that we have today where we list out the local zip codes, and the geographical preference there is a tiebreaker in the bidding process. So there isn't a preference item, so to speak, but if we have a tie in the bids, that is one of the tiebreakers that a local vendor would have preference over somebody who is not local, and we spell out what a local vendor is by listing a number of zip codes that are in the Minot surrounding area.
David, can you speak to the argument that is sometimes made in this discussion about the best use of tax dollars, meaning If we can buy it for less money, therefore saving the taxpayers dollars, isn't that what we should do, as opposed to taking a higher bid, even though it's local? I mean, how does that balance out, or how does one evaluate that?
And Mr. President, members of the council, that is certainly a consideration. And the last time we went through this exercise, we heard back from a number of folks in the community that some took the exact opposite perspective, that why would we pay anyone $1 more for the same product? And that's kind of the underlying premise of putting things out to bid, is to get the lowest competitive bid or responsible bid to do these projects as frugally as possible. So that is a challenge. And what is the correct amount of preference if you're going to come up with a preference item, and how is that equitable across the board?
Okay, yeah. Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, President Jenser. I don't have any questions for Dave. I guess I'll maybe see if anybody's got questions for Dave, so that way you can sit back down. So again, I get this. I understand the logic behind it, and this is exactly what I do with my paycheck. I've got a friend who does drywall, and he does my drywall. I don't bid it out. I could probably get it done for cheaper. But he's my friend. That's my preference. When we're elected to find the best value for taxpayer dollars. I think to Alderman Blessum's example of a single mother working a couple jobs, trying to put more money in their pocket. Now we say, no, your water rates, because these are paid by utility rates, your rates are going to stay high or go up because we want to give money to locals. Is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know, but I can't do that. I can't support this policy for some of the reasons Alderman Fuller even said. What message does this send to Bismarck? We're giving you guys less money, so make it go further. Well, we're going to make it go less far because we're going to give it and go with higher bids just because someone's local. And we could get the same product for cheaper. And there is a benefit to hiring out of state contractors, out of town contractors. They're coming, they're eating in our restaurants, they're staying in our hotels. There is an economic impact from that as well. So again, and I don't know if this gives me any more right to speak, but I live in this world where I have to sharpen my pencil. I'm doing bids on a daily basis, and if I want to work, I got to sharpen my pencil and I got to put my best price forward. I don't ask some homeowner to lower their standards so that I can up my average. I have to put my best foot forward. I can't get on board with this, because when we talk about $60 million from the legislature, adding 10% on that just so that we can give a local preference, another $6 million that could go further for further projects and take more burden off of taxpayers and utility payers. I think it defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do, especially when we're hearing from Bismarck that we're already having issues pulling contractors in here. Well, what does this say to someone? And having a conversation with Jason Sorensen on this, when you're talking about some of these bid packages that are being put together for phases of flood protection, this isn't somebody sitting down at their kitchen counter. I mean, they're putting tens, 20s, 30s of thousands of dollars into putting these packages together. And now if they say, why would I even do that when I'm already at a disadvantage? I'm already one step behind a local contractor. And I get it. I like our local contractors. I think they do good work. But I don't ask for that in my line of work, and I don't think they need it in theirs.
Alderman Samuelson.
Mr. Mayor, I appreciate all that, Paul. The one thing I will say, because I've been in the world of having to bid and stuff too, and when I have stuff done of my own, there's been many times I've not taken the low bid, just because of who it is, possibly, or whatever that is. And I like the idea of at least looking at this, because there are policies out there where if, say, you're within 5%, that local person can match that bid. So then you're spending the same amount of money. So I don't think we should take it off of the table and not look at it. I think it's something that we should at least look at. Thank you.
Alderman Blessing?
Yeah, I'm going to just kind of echo Alderman Samuelson's thought there. I don't disagree with Paul at all. I think we owe it to the taxpayers. I've said in many different settings that we owe it to them to get the best price that we can. At the same time, this vote right this second isn't deciding that. And I think hearing from staff on what some possibilities could be, I think is worthwhile at this time because we are getting some of the feedback from some of the local bidders. And so I think it's worth hearing what the possibilities could be, and then we'll have a spirited debate at that point, is my thought.
Just one more point.
Alderman Fuller?
Thank you. So, Paul, I wasn't talking about local contractors for flood control. I'm talking about local infrastructure projects that are using taxpayer dollars, not flood control money, taxpayer dollars that these people, their families, their employees have all paid into us that we continue to send out of the state. That isn't fair to them, and it isn't good for our economy.
If I could just respond to that real
Alderman
quick.
Pittner?
Yeah, come on.
Well, come on. The individual is not, I get it, they have employees that work, but the property taxes from this contract that is in question is not inside the city limits. And the new shop is not inside the city limits.
Fair enough.
Again, so, well, let me finish. So again, that's what message does this send to out-of-state contractors is my concern. Out-of-state, out-of-city contractors to Bismarck that says we're willing to spend more to keep it local. It doesn't, I can't make that make sense to me, but only one vote.
Okay, this is a fascinating philosophical debate, and I think we don't have to come to agreement tonight, but we have a motion and a second in front of us, so let's vote on that, and then we'll see where we come out, okay? So please record your vote.
The motion passed 4-2 with dissents from Olson and Pittner.
Okay, that concludes the consent items for tonight. We'll now move to section 7, which is the action items. The first item is the lease agreement with Oishii Ramen. What are your wishes?
Move approval.
Moved by Alderman Pittner,
Second.
second by Alderman Olson. Discussion.
Could I just ask Paul which one?
The proposed, was it the proposed city,
So their counter?
The count,
Yes.
their counter offer?
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Mr. Mayor,
Everybody clear on?
if I could, yeah, I could just throw that out there. So what's being proposed is that we accept Oishii Ramen's counteroffer of renting the space that they're in for $7,000 a month. They would have a 5-year lease term with a 2% increase in rents each year. And then there's a termination clause that would be available by both sides, I believe, and staff can tell us if we're wrong, but both sides could terminate with a convenience clause with a 365-day notice. And then there would be an option for extension of an additional 5-year term upon mutual agreement. So that's the counter that they came back to us with.
Okay, as long as we're all clear on that. Further discussion, Alderman Fuller?
Thank you. The only thing, I'm fine with that, but, you know, we went to them and said, this is what we want. They came back to us, they've dropped the rent price, they increased the number of years, and they added the 5-year thing and took out the property tax. The only thing I'd say is we give them what they asked for, but we add the property tax back. Why would we take the property tax out? It's not a triple net lease.
Further discussion? Okay, seeing none, I guess we're ready to, we have comments. Staff, yes.
Yeah, through Acting Mayor Janser and members of the council, through the discussions with the Oishii Ramen, yes, that was one of the sticking points that they were raising. They felt that we were raising the lease too much, and they were willing to come up with that, increase it 2%, and continue to do the maintenance on the building themselves. So they were hesitant about paying the property taxes with that, but we feel since we included so much into the increase in the rent, that would cover the taxes.
Any further? Go ahead, Scott.
If I could, thank you. One question I have with the lease that they have now, are they paying the property tax on it, the property now?
Alderman, or President Janser, Alderman Samuelson, they are not.
Okay.
Alderman Fuller.
Chris, do you know off the top of your head, how much is the property tax that we're talking about for that unit?
Alderman Janser and Fuller, last time I had checked, it's roughly around 75 to, between 7,500 and 9,000, depending on what the valuation of the final project will be.
But that's not their full share, right?
Correct.
That's the whole building, not just their leased portion.
It's my understanding, yes.
Further discussion? Questions for Chris? Thank you, Chris. Seeing no further discussion, it appears we're ready to vote.
Motion passed unanimously.
Moving on to item 7.2, the Master Services Agreement with Flock Group Incorporated for Flock Services. What are your wishes?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Alderman Blessing.
Mayor. Thank you. Thanks for coming up, Chief. We'll have a bit of a discussion here. The license plate reader technology is used in many places across the country. I'll just say a few words, Chief, and then we'll have you maybe respond to some of the stuff that I have to say. I spent some time, earlier this winter at the legislature. There was a bill in front of the Transportation Committee in the House, where BCI was looking at expanding license plate reader technology, getting it onto DOT signage, getting it into more data sharing agreements, getting more ways to use this technology. And one of the things I want to tell everybody is that I don't dispute for one moment that this would be a tool that would be great for law enforcement. I think we can all agree that it's a tool that would be useful in the job that they do. But the one thing I want to start off with in this discussion is that during the COVID era, if we didn't understand it before that, we found out what it means to trade safety for freedom. That's what happened. We decided that closing businesses, masking people, all of the things that we did in the name of keeping people safe, we gave up freedoms, top to bottom. For me, this step that we're looking at, and I think the chief is going to have a lot of information for us about the safeguards in the system, the different things that can be done to configure it, to protect civil liberties, to do all of those things. I'll be upfront. It's going to be hard for me to get there because I see this as a non-starter from the very beginning, and it's not something that I can get behind for all of those reasons. Even with the best safeguards in place, a system like this is only useful in stopping it after the issue has already occurred. And that's a tough spot for us to be. And so if that data, again, is being used in any way, shape, or form in a way that it shouldn't, we've already lost that civil liberty up front. And so, Chief, it's important for me to say this all now because we're not using it. This is not a Minot issue at this point whatsoever. Our team here is doing things by the book and doing things the way that they should. It is in use in other parts of the state. It's a good discussion, I think, for us to have at this point before we get going with it and before it moves on. So with that, if you've got something that you want to share, I think we could go there, or if I'll leave it to you, Mr. Mayor, to take it from there.
Okay, Chief, did you want to go ahead and give us kind of a rundown on, what we're talking about here? That'd be maybe helpful for those who haven't done the research that Alderman Blessum apparently has, or who just aren't as familiar with what we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is important to have a discussion on this, and that's why I bring it up. I am not an expert on LPR technology, so to that respect, I asked Kristen McLeod from Flock to be here today to describe the system, because I do believe it's important for you all to understand, fully understand the system prior to making a decision. So I'm going to let her explain what LPR is, but what I'm going to tell you what it's not. What it's not is it's not traffic light monitors. It's not designed for traffic enforcement. We're not talking about e-ticketing or anything like that. What we're looking for is a system that can provide us with safety measures to protect the public at the same time as with robust policy and procedures protecting civil liberties. So some of the benefits, and they fit into the city aspirations of safety, welcoming and safe, would be that the system is designed to locate potential problems as they come into the city of Minot and give us an alert. So we're talking about license plates. It does not focus on people. And ultimately, the system focuses on license plates and vehicles. And it provides still shots which analyze those license plates and vehicles to determine whether that's a wanted vehicle. What it does is there's a hot list that exists, and it can notify us if somebody is wanted out of another community, for example, a very serious crime. You have somebody who's wanted out of Nebraska for homicide. It has the potential to let us know that they're in our community right away. What it does not do, what we do not want to do, is configure it to be something that's used to search for parking ticket warrants or anything like that. We're looking for alerts on public safety issues. Another thing that it could also be used, for example, the silver alert that we had recently, where a lady traveled out of Minot and ended up getting stuck and spent the night in her car. This is a system that would be able to tell us where she last passed and provide us with information to focus our search in that area. A third example of the safe and welcoming is major crimes, such as homicide. I can think of many of cases where this would have been beneficial to us in an investigation. And it may have provided us with information where we were able to locate a suspect a lot quicker before they fled the city of Minot. So I'm talking about the Kamar Kennedy case where he ended up in Detroit. Several other examples of homicides where they left Minot and it took us months to locate and track down the suspect, the assailant. Another thing, excellent and connected. It's a system that works with other departments. So we have the potential of teaming up with other agencies and providing assistance to them and also receiving assistance from them. I'll let Kristen explain a little bit better as to how that works. But as far as the civil liberties, that is one of my major concerns. I mean, civil liberties are one of my top priorities as well. So you can't watch out for the public's interest if you're not concerned about their civil liberties. You're not making Minot a better place to live without worrying about that. So by developing strict policies and procedures, I feel like we can have the best of both worlds. And so I'm going to ask Kristen to step up and give a demonstration or explanation of what this system's all about. And at the end, I'll stand for questions. I'm sure Kristen will stand for questions as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Kristen McLeod, and I'm a Community Engagement Manager with Flock Safety. And thank you so much for your time this evening, the opportunity to share information. Flock is really grounded in shaping a safer future together. A little bit of history on Flock as a company. We were founded in 2017 when our CEO, Garrett Langley, experienced an uptick of crime in his own neighborhood. A lot of property crimes had occurred. And so he went to his local law enforcement frustrated and provided them with personal doorbell video footage and said, "Here you go, what can you do with this? Help us make our neighborhood safer." And graciously, the department thanked him for that information. However, it just didn't provide the investigative leads needed to pursue and apprehend the suspects. So Garrett, an engineer by trade, set out and researched and found that the vast majority of crimes are committed in conjunction with use of a vehicle. And so vehicle descriptions, license plate numbers would be really helpful and provide a very important investigative lead to apprehend suspects and bring closure to those cases and for victims. With that information, he started with our flagship product, which is a license plate reader, and that's what our focus will be today. We have since grown into additional products, but again, the license plate reader provides an efficient, impactful, ethical tool to law enforcement to help increase public safety. Flock knows that resources of departments across the country are stretched very thin. Your officers wear many different hats, and it's difficult for them to make the public safety impacts that they want many of the times. Their departments are also faced with lack of staffing. They're often down many officers, and it's really difficult to fill those positions as well. Recruitment and retention is definitely a pain point that we see nationally. So enter collaborative policing technology. We believe that we are able to provide your officers with a tool to help multiply their force, and again, making this accessible to departments of different sizes and in many different communities. We are proud to share that we are in over 5,000 communities nationwide and work with 3,000 law enforcement agencies, and we assist with solving 10% of reported crime. Flock operates as a subscription type model, so we really wanted to design this tool so it's a light lift for cities to implement. Flock Safety owns the hardware, and that means we maintain the cameras, we proactively monitor the camera's health, and we also provide software updates and make sure that that hardware is functioning so that your officers have the best tools at their disposal. We also provide permitting assistance. When you're under contract with Flock, all of the data storage is included with that, and all of the devices are solar powered. They are mounted on poles and solar powered with a battery backup, and we provide that installation as well. With our license plate readers, as mentioned, these are cameras that are mounted on poles. They're in fixed locations. They're aimed at capturing still images of the rear of a vehicle. So they are not focused on people at all. They are focused on vehicles and obtaining those vehicle attributes. Our machine learning then categorizes all of that information into an easy to navigate database so that in the event in a criminal investigation or a public safety matter, officers are able to go into the Flock system and search for suspect vehicles. We also are integrated with real-time alerts. So the National Crime Information Center, as well as the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, in addition to custom hot list alerts, so that if an incident occurs in your community and at times there can be a lag when you enter in information into the National Crime Information Center. And so if there is a critical incident that is developing, your officers are able to enter suspect vehicle information into the system, and they will be alerted to that suspect vehicle's location once that vehicle passes by a camera in your community. The officers will be alerted to that vehicle's location within about 20 seconds. We're ethically built. There is no facial recognition. As Chief mentioned, this is not speed tracking. We're providing indiscriminate evidence to your officers. Flock was built with privacy in mind. So the first important piece of that is all of the data is owned by the city, by the department, and will never be shared by Flock with any third party. Flock automatically deletes data at the 30-day mark. So it balances your constituents' privacy with providing your officers that investigative value of that 30-day historical information. Something very important to point out is that no personal data is kept in the flock system. It's simply still images of the rear of vehicles. Data security is also very important to us. All of the images are end-to-end encrypted, and they are stored on the AWS server. We also very much believe in accountability and transparency. And so our system is you are required to enter in a search reason when you're looking for vehicle information. And what that does is it creates a user ID and that search reason, and it provides an audit trail for departments so that they can ensure that the system is being used in accordance with department policy, which also aligns with their community values. Flock reduces bias in crime solving, again, by focusing on providing that indiscriminate, that objective evidence. And lastly, unique to Flock, we offer what we call a transparency portal. The transparency portal is a public-facing webpage, and this is an example of Madison, South Dakota's. And this provides your community information on how your department is utilizing the Flock system. It's very small, the text up there, but it outlines some policy information, including prohibited and acceptable uses, as well as information on usage. So how many or how long is the department's data retention? How many cameras are owned by the department? And it also lists all of the law enforcement agencies that this department has elected to share their data with. In addition to the transparency portal, so that is a public-facing webpage providing your community information, we have the Insights dashboard, which is for the administrators of the system. So that is where the audit report will live, and chief and his administrators of the system, command staff, can go in and look at return on investment also. Are the cameras providing the impact that we set out to? Are officers utilizing the tool? And again, the audit information is there as well. We are proud to say that we are routinely solving and preventing crime, and just to share some use cases and successes with you, Madison, South Dakota PD, they shared with us that they utilized our system to locate a stolen vehicle. A Chevy Silverado passed by a camera in their community and sent officers an alert that it was near that camera's location. They were able to perform a traffic stop and arrested 2 individuals. And those arrest charges included possession of stolen property, driving on a revoked license. They were also in possession of drug paraphernalia. Altoona, Iowa shared with us that within 7 months of implementing the Flock system, they were able to locate 85 vehicles that were associated with criminal activity. They utilized LPR to help them execute 46 arrests. And they also had 72 investigative leads developed with the assistance of LPR. As Chief mentioned, LPR is a very powerful crime-fighting tool, but in addition to that, we are very proud to say that we're helping locate missing vulnerable people. So in instances of a silver alert, if there is a mental health situation that is escalating, being able to input that vehicle information into the system provides critical leads to law enforcement to be able to locate missing individuals very quickly and return them safely home. Just to wrap up, this is an example. This was the first child abduction that Flock cameras helped assist. This occurred in Chamblee, Georgia. Thank goodness that these types of crimes are very rare, but when they do happen, time is of the essence, and being able to find that child is really, really important and critical. So an Amber Alert was issued for this missing child at 12:30 p.m. and within 5.5 hours, with the assistance of LPR technology, officers were able to locate that suspect vehicle and return the child home to his mother, again, within 5.5 hours. So pretty remarkable results and something we're very proud of. With that, I will pause if Chief wants to add anything else. Otherwise, happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, so like I said, I mean, obviously it's a force multiplier, and that's what's important to us, is that we're able to do more with less and protect our community better with less. I also get that there are serious considerations for civil liberties here. And to that respect, we have to have a robust policy that protects those civil liberties. The public porthole is also a very important transparency for the community. I mean, we need to have that available so that the public knows exactly what we're doing with this. When we went and reviewed a lot of the usages, what we see from other communities is they have many cars that pass by these cameras, but very few actual queries of cars by officers, which means that they're utilizing the system only when they need to. And that's our goal. It would be to only utilize the system when we absolutely need to solve crime. And with that, I'd stand for any questions.
Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Stuart. Dale, you'd stated that we'll need a policy in place, a robust policy. Do we have a draft policy? Is there a template that other communities follow that you're looking at?
We have several templates. We haven't created our draft policy. I gave it to the policy working group, and I told them I'd like to see a policy in the near future, one that stringently protects public interest. So I'm waiting to see that. But the point is, we have the ability to craft that as strict as necessary. For example, we could have procedures that. Well, one that goes without saying is there has to be a case involved in order to query it. But however, we could set it to be a certain level of offense. We could also set that to be there's a certain level of information you have to have before you're able to query that vehicle. We can also set the parameter to be a supervisor has to approve of that first. So there's several steps that we can take to try to prevent misuse of the system. To Alderman Blessing's point, a lot of times the audit doesn't tell you until later. But what we would do is a regular audit on this system. And that audit would be a system process that I already had conversations with finance. It would be an audit that's done by the finance department. So it's not the police department patrolling their own usage of the system. It would be the finance department making sure that we're operating within the guidelines of our policy to ensure that there's not abuse of the system. So there are some protections that we can easily put in place and ensure that the system's not being abused.
Further
Just want to continue.
Continue.
Just so I understand the system, something happens, we conduct with Flock, it's recording, so we're able to look back in time, correct? Like if a crime were to happen at 12, we can look back at 12:30, even though we haven't submitted the query until 1:30.
I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, so it's not recording, it's a still image of the vehicle, and yes, when you enter a search reason, you can go back and look for that specific vehicle that if something were to have occurred at a previous time, yes.
Perfect.
Okay. Alderman Blessing.
Okay, so Kristen, if you wouldn't mind, I want to talk about a few different things. You know, and as I said before, and the mayor kind of mentioned this a little bit, I've spent a little bit of time on this over the last couple months. So I'd like you to respond first of all to what a simple internet search talks about with license plate reader technology and the misuses that have gone on. And again, I'm going to state this unequivocally. We're at the right point for the Minot Police Department to make sure we never have that happen, because we're doing it now rather than when something has happened. That's the good news. This technology has been abused across the country. Just for the public's thoughts here, first one, Allegheny Township, Pennsylvania. A police officer was accused of using LPR technology to track his estranged wife's movements. He allegedly conducted over 100 pages of entries related to the locations and times of family members. He faced charges of terroristic threats and stalking. And so I don't doubt for a moment, I mentioned this before, I don't doubt for a moment that we could write a policy that will absolutely find that when it occurs, but it's already occurred. It's already happened at the point that we find it, even with the best of audits. And so I'd like you to respond to that first of all. You guys do good work. I'm not trying to tear that down. I have a serious civil liberties concern about where this is headed, and I want to head it off, or at least help my colleagues understand that this is not a slam dunk because it does good things. And so if you could please respond to that to start with.
Sure, thank you, and I appreciate that. With regard to, I am not familiar with the Allegheny case. I am aware of two other instances that occurred in Kansas. with the flock system in particular. And with that, again, the system did exactly what it was supposed to do. With the audits in place, they were able to identify that misuse and take action. In one instance, the person was discredited, and in the second, faced criminal charges. And I can reiterate what Chief said, having the recurring audits in place at a cadence that reflects your community's values and the concern about the system is really critical, and we strongly encourage departments to implement that within their policy. And I would say that, unfortunately, anytime you have a human and technology in any sort of system, of course, there is risk for misuse. But again, with robust policy in place, you can really mitigate those risks to the best of the ability of the department.
Okay, if I can continue, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so the next thing I want to make sure that we all understand as well is that the system, as we've laid it out so far, has these checks and balances. This was included in a rentals item in our budget because it's actually a service contract. What we're suggesting here is that we have pole-mounted cameras that would be fed in. I think the chief had mentioned to me that we would primarily focus around the edges of town, but there's other strategic spots where that makes sense. The other piece that I want to make sure, again, that my colleagues understand is that the other possibility here is that the cameras mounted on troopers' vehicles or on police department vehicles could also be turned on and hooked into the system. So as they're moving throughout the city, they also can be taking stills of vehicles around them. Can you respond to that as well? Is that intended with this?
Yes, so we have an integration with Axon and their mobile mounted cameras. Flock doesn't provide mobile mounted cameras, but if you do have Axon mobile mounted, you can integrate those into the Flock system.
Okay. If I can keep going. So the next thing, another major issue that has been identified and was brought up during the House hearings on this in the state of North Dakota is that while I understand what you're saying, that because this is sort of that blanket approach that just records everybody going by, or records the wrong words, takes snapshots of everybody going by, that it's indiscriminate. Now, one of the things that I have a hard time with, especially if we head down the vehicle path, is that our police vehicles end up in parts of town because that's where the crime is in a lot of cases. And one of the major civil liberties issues with this nationwide is that there is a discriminatory part of that can come with that, whether you look at it from a racial perspective or just simply an economic status perspective, that we're going to be, in my opinion, potentially targeting people based on a factor other than something that's completely random, simply because of where they live or their economic status. And I guess how would you respond to that?
Right, so the system is, number one, built to alert law enforcement of wanted vehicles. So if a suspect vehicle is entered into the NCI system, is wanted, that a vehicle is associated with a felony warrant, they would be alerted to that. If there is a suspect vehicle, a want for, say, a murder suspect, law enforcement would be alerted to that vehicle if it passed by one of the cameras in the community. So it's helping with precision policing, so only alerting to vehicles that are wanted and associated with a criminal investigation. The second piece is providing law enforcement the investigative tools. So they have at their disposal the previous 30 days worth of vehicle information in the Flock system. In the event of a criminal investigation, they're able to enter that search reason and then go back and find critical pieces to that investigative puzzle and save that as evidence. So it is indiscriminate in that it is focusing on wanted vehicles and suspect vehicles only versus every vehicle. I mean, the officers would not be searching for specific type of vehicles unless it is linked to a suspect in a crime that has occurred or there is a public safety incident such as a missing person and that vehicle with that person.
So if I can continue, again, I see what you're saying, or They're trying to stalk a former lover. And that's the issue that I can see just through the regular searches here. And that gets pretty scary to me. And I do not want to put our officers in a position where they've got to answer for that after all that they've been through over the last 8 months. I think right now where we're sitting as a city and as a department, we do not want to introduce this question in the minds of our residents. I think it's not the right direction with where we're sitting as a city.
Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Fuller.
Thank you. I guess one question with the system, and I don't know if it's for you or for Chief. Say we arrest somebody, right? Can we use this system then to go back and see if they've done other bad things over the course of the last 30 days? And do we plan to use it that way? And also, if we don't plan to use it that way, do we have the same guarantee from the state's attorney?
So we have the ability to go back and track them for other things, but our policy would not be set up that way unless it fell within the policy for some sort of reason. So no, I don't believe that we would have the intention of going back and saying, okay, you committed this crime, so now we're gonna go see all the different things that you did. That would not fall within the policy that we have. I just wanted to, Captain Sunheim is a better understanding of our Axon system, so I wanted to address one of the questions on Axon. So if the Axon system is not recording, then it's not actually maintaining stills. It's just running the license plates of vehicles. So it wouldn't be a continual record, is what I understand. If it were recording, then of course we would have that record, but we would anyways. It would be, those vehicles would be tracked on that system. So.
Okay, can I follow up on that, Mark, quick? So, Chief, so are you saying that today our current police vehicles are taking snaps and checking them against the database to see if there's a silver alert or something out?
No, they are not. So we have, like, when I described our Axon system, the new upgrade to our Axon system will have the LPR ability, which can be turned off or on. Currently, it is not activated. We currently are not running with LPR activity.
And can I ask for a clarification with the linkage between the Flock system and the Axon system? Is that something that's a choice, or is it automatic, or what is, I mean, could we not do that, or what, clarify that for me, would you please?
That is a choice. You don't have to turn that integration on.
Thank you. Other discussion?
And I just want to be crystal clear on this, so that we have not operated with LPR at all at this point. This is a council decision. We're not operating with the LPR on our Axon. It was something that the system provided us, the upgrade to the system provided us, but not that we specifically went out and asked for. So as far as Axon is concerned, that's a system that we can turn on if we choose to.
Separate
issue from this. It's kind of Alderman Pittner.
Dale, do you understand, are there any other departments, Sheriff's Department, Highway Patrol, are there any actively in our area using LPR?
The Sheriff's Department does have an LPR car, so a mobile car that uses it. For governmental use, that's what's in our area that I know of. HP's might, I don't know, but I can tell you that it's a private companies do utilize LPR. So there are several private companies throughout the city that utilize it.
And Mark, if I could add just something to that, and Chief, tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe both Bismarck and Fargo have this running today.
Correct. Well, Bismarck has a different system. Fargo has a Flock system. Yes.
Okay. Scott.
Thank you. Dale, now, when we were talking about this previously, and I just want to understand this, do you have to have the plate number, or you're looking for a specific vehicle?
The LPR system has, and I think maybe Kristen would be a better, trying to explain it's not as good.
Thank you for that. So we also have what we call a vehicle fingerprint. Oftentimes when there is a witness to a crime, it's really difficult to provide a full license plate number. So if there is a witness to a crime and they provide law enforcement with a vehicle description, they are able to search for a tan SUV with a Tennessee plate, for example. So they're able to search with vehicle attributes in the system as well. It doesn't require a plate number. You can also search for a partial plate number.
Thank you.
Alderman Olson.
Well, thank you, Acting Mayor Janser. So in all of this, I certainly want to state that obviously civil liberties are a priority for all of us. I'm sure that that's a true statement. Whenever I can vote for something to give our police department a tool that will help keep our community safe, I want to consider that very seriously. I'm also not naive to believe that this would be the only way that some group larger than myself can determine where I'm at and what I'm doing. If I walk down an aisle in a department store, they know I'm there. They see my face. If I make a credit card purchase, they know where I'm from. Our privacy is not completely protected. And so knowing that all they're doing is looking at license plates and not any face recognition, I think it's a wonderful tool, and I certainly plan to support it.
Further discussion, questions? Alderman Pittner.
No questions. So I don't know if anybody's got questions. But I would just ask this, would this be something, for some of the concerns that Alderman Blessam has, and I think I share those as well, echo Alderman Olson's comments. Civil liberties are a priority, but when I look to these cases, I think of, in Minot, I think it was last fall, you had a couple of kids abducted from a daycare center and couldn't be found for a few days, and thank God they were found safely. But if a tool like this were in place, maybe that would have got them home a little bit quicker. Maybe, and again, maybe the next time we're not as lucky. So again, I echo, I share some of those concerns. Would it be appropriate to and maybe for some of the my colleagues to maybe make this conditional on review of a policy first? Are we putting the cart before the horse, saying we're going to do this and then we're going to get a policy and say, well, maybe if this policy was different, I would have felt better about it. And again, I maybe throw that out for discussion from my colleagues.
If I could respond to that, thanks for that, Paul. I think that is a good question of cart before the horse. I think that's a really good one. I guess the question that I would have is, based on what I said, and I only alluded to one. Kristen graciously talked about there are flock issues. That wasn't a flock one that I actually alluded to. Flock itself has seen issues. My question would be, knowing that those things have happened, knowing that we wouldn't know them until they were done, is there a policy that makes you feel okay about that? Is there a policy that says, yeah, it's reviewed weekly? One of the things I mentioned to Chief Plessis when we were discussing this at the end of last week was, I don't even like the word audit. Audit implies we're looking at a few of the records. We're doing a sampling. If we were headed anywhere near this, I want it to be a review. I want every record checked. When I look at it, I want every record on a public website showing exactly what the police department was looking for using a system like this. And even if we had those in a policy, I'm a no on this. Okay, that I think each of us has to think of, because even the one that I talked about and the few that I looked up, it didn't say he was then accused of murder because he killed his estranged wife or his estranged girlfriend. They were stalking, they were harassing, they were those types of things. Maybe I just didn't find them. And so, yeah, we're talking about really, really rough crime and bad things that can happen and trying to do some things about those. This actually has the possibility of causing it. And so the other thing that I'll say, back to Alderwoman Olson's point, and it's a good one. I mean, I think we have to give our department, our police department, our fire department, we've had a great history of giving them as many tools as we can. And when you're talking about safety of officers and authorizing additional fire department team members to make sure we've got the right people on trucks, I can get behind those. This is a tool that doesn't enhance their safety. This is a law enforcement tool that theoretically can make us a little bit safer on the streets, but what are we giving up? And that's what I fear with this. And so just as a direct question, it's hard for me to get to a policy that I could see. And I would ask each of you to think, what would it mean for you to get to a policy that you're okay with?
Okay, any further discussion? We do have a motion and a second, I believe, to approve this. If there's no further discussion, I guess it's time. Paul?
I guess just to maybe mitigate some concerns, I'll offer that as an amendment that we approve this conditional on approving an acceptable policy to the council.
Okay, there's a motion to amend. Is there a second?
Second?
Seconded by Alderman Olson.
And the reason behind that, because I stated the cart before the horse, again, I do see the benefits in this program. I do see the concerns. They're well documented, you know, and again, those will be questions we'll ask when these issues arose in these other communities. How were they solved? How were they mitigated? What protections were put in place moving forward so that doesn't happen again? So that's why I'll support the motion to at least see a policy so that maybe we can get there to give the police department a tool and a tool to our community to be safer.
Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, we'll vote on the amendment, which is to have a policy or contingent on seeing a policy and approving that along with this.
Motion passed to amend 4-2 with dissents from Blessam and Fuller.
Okay, so we have the, back to the original motion as amended. Any further discussion? Paul?
Since it's amended motion, I guess I'll look to Dale. Dale, you've got some homework to do now. Do you have a timeline on when this will be back in front of us, if it were to pass?
Hold, a point of order, Mr. Mayor. I don't think we've approved the item, right? We approved a motion, an
Motion to amend.
So you're in the discussion?
If this were to come back to us, what would Dale's timeline be on that? Just so I understand in my own mind.
I guess I would like a month to get it in place. I want a policy that I vet very well before I try to put it in front of you
Okay.
to review.
Thank you.
City manager?
Just a point of clarification, just so I understand this. As I understood the motion was that you would still potentially take action on the new amended motion, but if it passes the council, staff would not have the authority to implement flock until we brought a policy back for approval of council. That's different than we're not bringing the flock contract back for approval of the council until the policy has been presented to council. Am I understanding that correctly? So the intent of the motion is that you would conditionally approve the flock contract tonight, but staff wouldn't have the authority to implement the contract until a policy had been brought back and approved by council. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct.
Okay.
So if I could clarify that, Mr. Mayor, are we then authorizing the funds to be spent when we may take a year to approve a policy?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Fuller, the funds have already been authorized with the approval of the 2025 budget. But technically, as I understood the motion, yes, you would be authorizing the staff to enter into the contract, but we wouldn't be able to turn the system on until we had a policy that had been approved by council. So yes, the funds would be expended, but not utilized until a policy was approved.
Okay.
Alderman Blessam.
All right, so this is not exactly where I intended to go here, but to say that the funds were authorized, they were put into the budget under a rentals item with no flock wording or anything related. We had a presentation from Chief Klug at the time that talked about this system, but as I looked through the budget, it was nowhere there. So I'm gonna implore my colleagues, don't spend the money before we know whether we can get to a workable policy. This doesn't make any sense. If we can go away and bring a workable policy back, then I think we take a look at the contract again. I think that we have to do this in the right order, or we're spending money. I understand it was authorized in a budget, but it was inside $200,000 in a rentals line item in the budget.
Alderman Pittner.
So would it be, so I'll make the motion to table this until we have a policy in front of us.
I'll second that.
Okay. table till we have a policy to, that we have approved. Alderman Pittner.
I think this motion gets the true intent of what we're trying to accomplish, right? We may be okay with this, we may not, it may pass, it may not, but before we do that, we want to see the policy in place, so that not only us as city members of council, but as the community has an opportunity to give their opinions on this resource.
Okay. City manager.
Not trying to stalemate the decision, but just to make sure that we're aware of all the potential impacts. Is there anything with this contract that is time sensitive as far as pricing or anything? Or will the price point be the same pending this coming back to the council in the future? I just want to make sure we're not going to see a 10 or 20% increase with a.
Yeah, the short answer is we don't know until we take a look at the contract again.
Any further questions or any further discussion? Okay, the motion is to table this item until we have a policy that we've approved. Time to vote.
The motion passed 5-1 with dissents from Samuelson.
Okay, that brings us to 7.3, approval of the 2026 budget schedule.
Move approval.
Moved by Lisa,
Second.
second by Paul. Discussion. Paul.
I think I've called you 3 different things, but thank you, Mayor, Acting Mayor Janser, President Janser, all the above. Again, we get to this point in the budget process every year, and one thing we always ask for is direction from council. What do we want to prioritize, so that we can let the department heads go to work. So I just wanted to kind of have a general conversation if the council found it appropriate on just what some of the I feel maybe some of our budget priorities should be before we kind of start to get into the weeds. So personally, I'm going to speak to myself just to garner some conversation. I'd like to see the staff present a few different options within the budget, whether it be a 3% increase to a 3% decrease, holding the line anywhere in between. I'd like those to be somewhat of the guardrails that, as far as direction that we give. When looking at prioritizing things, I'd like to see a priority on no new positions in this next budget, unless we've already encumbered those or committed to those positions. We talked about safer grants, firefighters in the future. Those are commitments that we've made for future council, so I'd like to start factoring those into our decision-making. One of the things that I think we've seen through my time on council is employee pay and benefits. And if that's part of the merit-based system that we're looking at, I'd like that to be a priority of things that we fit into our budget to the best of our ability. Because again, our resources are our people. We just talked about this several different times throughout this meeting. Our citizens, but our staff are hurt through some of the recent current events, and I think they need to know that we are prioritizing them and their retention. When it comes to finding efficiencies within the city, I'd like to look. I think we've talked about this, whether it be through consolidation of positions, whether it's efficiency that can be found from moving one position to another, reallocating positions within departments, from department to department. I'd like an honest projection. We'll look to the police department. We've talked about this. I remember it was my first year as president of council. We authorized positions, but we didn't fund them. I want an honest conversation on what are we funding this year. Are we I don't know what the current count is on vacancies, 14, give or take. If we're going to hire 4, let's budget 4. If we're going to budget, and again, then we can come back and do a budget amendment if we exceed some of our expectations. Another factor, and we'll talk about this further in the CIP, I want to prioritize the police station and the current police station. And again, this might be a cart before the horse here, and this is just my opinion. I don't think we're leaving that building. I think we need to prioritize how do we get the bones of that building set up for the next 10, 15, 20 years if possible. Is it the heating and cooling system? Is it the roof? Is it the infrastructure there? Let's take care of the assets that we have so that we're not kicked in the shorts later when we get a $2 million roof bill or a $1.5 million heating and cooling bill. And obviously, again, that'll be part of a future conversation when we kick up CIP and EAPC and some of what we look at those buildings. But I think getting that house in order is very important, at least to start that conversation, that process, in this budget process. So those are some of my ideas. Again, through some of the recent turmoil, I want staff to focus on work, and if that's the marching orders that I see, and I'll leave it up to the floor of the colleagues to give theirs and disagree with me or not.
Alderman Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with you, Paul. I like some great comments in there, some good focal points for the staff. I think that's great. The one thing I saw in this year, and again, I'm not trying to be in any way rude, but we have 3 or 4 days of department tours again. Like, some of you have sat on the council for 10 plus years. We all went through department tours last year. The folks in the city are busy. I don't think they got to do the dog and pony show for us anymore, to go through the departments. Now, if there's something specific they want to talk to us about, let us know, and I'll certainly come to a meeting like that. But I don't think we need to waste department heads' time for 3-4 hours 4 times during this process to go through the departments again. That's just my opinion.
City Manager.
Mr. Fuller, you stole some of my thunder there a little bit, because I hadn't had a chance to interject in the comment, but that was one of the things I was going to ask for feedback on was, what ways would the council like staff to present our departmental needs? Is a tour the most effective way to do that? Obviously we try to do tours every other year when we have new elected officials coming on to kind of give one-on-one with individuals that may or may not be up to speed on things. That doesn't mean we need to do it every year, and I don't want to waste the council's time, and staff doesn't want to waste their time. And so we wanted to focus tours on things that you wanted to see and hear directly, that maybe don't translate well into like a PowerPoint presentation or onto a spreadsheet. But we did build into the calendar. We didn't intend to take the whole week to take you on tours. It was just to block a week that we had some flexibility during that time frame, that you have your schedules available. But I don't believe staff intends to spend 4 or 5 days doing tours. But I would like some feedback from council on that question, and you've got it off to a good start on what's the best way for staff to present the departmental information and needs back to the council in a way that you want to see and hear it. So,
City Manager and Council, I disclosed to the City Manager at the beginning of the meeting that as I looked at this, that week of May 5th through 8th, which is I guess, and it goes in, to the 9th, Monday through Friday. That week, Monday through Thursday, I am scheduled to be out of town in Washington, D.C. And so I guess if we're gonna shorten up the tour presentation activity, I would plead for it to maybe shift to that Friday and the following Monday or something like that. But if it can't, or if it doesn't work for anybody else, then I will certainly have to decide where my priorities are and perhaps cancel my trip. But that just for your information. Alderman Pittner.
I just wanted to add, and that's one of the things I missed in my notes, Alderman Fuller, was yes, I think skipping the budget tour is the one that I would say might be beneficial, depending on where some of my other comments, maybe the police station, the police department might be one of those things. If we have kind of a budget in place for improvements for that facility, it might be ideal for us to walk that and see how those things will be affecting the current building. But
Bless him.
Yeah, just to add a few things to what's already been said. I think that would be a good idea, Paul, especially with the work that Chief Plessis and his team have been doing there and their ideas. I think that'll be a great time to do exactly that. A couple other things that are priorities for me. There was two items that I asked for coming out of the last budget process, and we'll see those hopefully from staff here shortly. One is the performance-based pay plan and what that can look like, and I think that's more important than ever in the environment we're headed to with caps on our levy ability and the things like that. The other piece is to have the plan from finance on the guardrails that we'll have for reserve for reserve levels. I think those are going to be really important for us to see as well as we factor those into the work that we're doing. And then as far as the tours go, I'm in agreement. If there is something specific we need to see, I think I'll jump on a bus anytime if that's what we need to do during that period. But I think hitting everyone as extensively as last time, I do agree, is kind of an every other year thing as we have new members. What's more important to me is to dig further, a level deeper into the budget and understand the line items better. And so that's what I'm hoping that we can use some of that time for, is to understand what some of those asks are and actually see them on paper to understand how they're flowing through into the document itself. Because one of the things to understand is that a lot of times these are disconnected by about 2 months from a discussion at a podium telling you, I'd like to buy this thing, I'm going to put it in my budget, to where it actually shows up as a dollar amount in a budget. And I think that's an important piece that we need to tie those together in our minds so we understand what we're seeing when we get to that point. So, yeah, that's my thoughts. In addition, I like Paul's idea of kind of the bracketing around 3%. I mean, you know, and that can apply in a lot of different ways. You know, we're certainly going to be there levy-wise because that's what the state's going to force on us here shortly. And so we're definitely going to need to see that. At the same time, you know, we've got to see how that factors through with everything else. You know, that's only one source of our funds, and actually a relatively small part of our funds. And so we're going to be focused there, but, you know, I like that bracketing.
Further, Scott?
Thank you, Mark. I had the same thing on mine as far as the budget tours, and I'm with Mike. I would rather sit down with department heads and talk about their budgets, specifically, some line items and things like that, so that the department heads will, you know, prioritize that. The other thing that I wanted to mention is during the budget process, even before I was on council, before we actually get to the end of a budget cycle, I always hear that the budget was reduced before it even got to us. That bothers me because we never had a budget to begin with, but yet it got reduced. We see reductions. I understand that it's probably priorities for some of the departments and stuff, that they wanted this, or this, and they dropped it off before it got to us, but we're told it was reduced. I don't think it gets reduced until it gets to council, so that's just something I wanted to say. And one of my priorities would be that we actually reduce the dollar amount of our budget.
Alderman Olson.
Thank you. I'm going to agree with most of the things that my colleagues have said. I actually had reached out to the city manager about 2 weeks ago and asked if we could kind of condense some of this time, because I think the discussion is the most important thing. And I also think that having us in a central location for the majority of the time makes us more accessible to the public. If we are on a bus and we're going here, here, and here, even though the schedules are provided and anyone can join us at any time, I think having us in one building for the majority of the time is beneficial to anyone that wants to be in that process early on.
Further comments? The primary item is the schedule, so I guess we've kind of broadened the discussion, but probably good that we've done that, and given perhaps some thoughts for the city manager and finance director and department heads to kind of consider. Any further thoughts on the schedule itself?
Just a point of order, Mr. Mayor. So we've got a motion to approve what's been presented to us. Harold, would you like us to amend it? Or I think the placeholders of the department tours with the feedback we've given, I think that timeline is fine. I think to Alderwoman Olson's point, there may be a better way to bring us together to have the discussion. So as long as the framework still fits your mind, then I think we're probably good with approving it as we've got it. But if you want an amendment, we can certainly do that.
Mayor Janser, bless him. I mean, ultimately, that's up to you guys. I will state that following the direction of council of wanting to go deeper into the budget, that's going to take probably all of a week to do that. So it's going to take more time to do that than the tours, which is fine. I'm not arguing against that. But then I would ask for direction from council of where and when you would like to time that. May is probably going to be early because I don't think our department budgets are completely developed at that point to be able to go line by line. That usually isn't until June, July timeframe. So if council doesn't want to do the tours, maybe that can be taken out, but I would recommend that you put in at least a week or two somewhere in June, probably, so that we can bring those to you and get further direction from council. So staff can wrap up that and I can present my recommended budget to you in mid-July.
If I could make an observation, it appears that it is, by the schedule we have in front of us, it looks like the department budgets are complete by June 20th. So it would seem to me that if what we want to see is the, proposed product, that it would need to be somewhere in the early 20s of June.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I could, I'll bring an amendment to the motion to, at the city manager's discretion, reduce the department tours week to what you really want us to see. If there's a few things, I'm all for that. But to also add the week of the 23rd of June for in-depth sessions where they make sense, if that works. Okay.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Is there discussion on the amendment?
If I may, I just want to make sure that the finance director is comfortable with that because it's his staff that bear a lot of the work of crunching the numbers and putting everything in and that kind of stuff. So I just want to make sure that he and his staff don't have any concerns with that change.
Mr. President, members of the council, I think I'm okay with that. I'm definitely looking for the clear direction up front. We have 3 folks in my department that will be out on maternity leave this summer, so we're going to be extremely shorthanded. So we want to keep this moving in a direct path as much as we can without going back and forth. So I think that will work to try and consolidate some of this, but the clear direction up front, I think, will help us be a lot more efficient in this process as well, and allow the city manager and my staff to work together to craft the budget that will meet the guidance that's been given up front. So hopefully that'll take away some of the back and forth and the minutia that happens later on. But I think that timeframe would work out just fine.
Okay. Thank you, David. All right, we have an amendment to the budget or schedule that we were given, and we've had good discussion. Let's vote.
The motion to amend passed unanimously.
Okay, that brings us to item 7.4, North Dakota Energy Conservation.
We have to
Mayor,
vote on the
yep.
original.
The amended motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, so we're back to the original motion as amended. Any further discussion? If not, let's go ahead and vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Okay, now on to 7.4, North Dakota Energy Conservation Grant, LED lighting, approval with budget amendment. What are your wishes?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
By Alderman Fuller, seconded by Alderman Pittner. Any discussion? Alderman Fuller.
The only discussion I have on this is the bank guy in me did the math, and it comes out to $56 per item. So is that $56 per light or $56 per light bulb? Because one's a good deal and one isn't. And I know Brian isn't here tonight. I just don't know if anybody can answer that question.
I think maybe our facilities manager can.
Oh,
and Brian is
he's
here.
He's on the.
Look at that.
Yeah, there he is. Sorry, Brian.
Brian's on screen.
Muted, Brian.
I'll let Brian talk and then I'll.
Okay. Brian, please enlighten us. We don't hear you. You're,
Muted.
you might be muted. Nope. Not yet.
Write it down.
Okay, I think with the technical difficulties, maybe we'll let Kevin talk.
Mr. Mayor, if I'm correct, and I'll get it out from Brian, yes or no, I believe it's the payback, energy side of it, so I don't know if they were actually going by the figure of the fixture or that was replacing or the new fixture.
Okay. All right, fair enough.
Oh, he's smiling, I'm good.
Okay, Brian, do we solve anything with you, or are you still out of commission? Yeah, we're full of technical difficulties, unfortunately. Okay.
Real quick, Mark. Kevin, real quick, do you know what the lifespan is of like these LED upgrades?
From some of the ones that when the LEDs were first put out, and we went and did a relamp of the vehicle maintenance shop. We're at a better part of 8 years now, and we're not seeing, 10 to 15 years total, depending on hard use. That's the best turnaround that we're seeing. It's more on the energy conservation side, plus better lighting.
Okay, thank you.
We have a coded message from.
Oh.
Did
he text us?
He says it's light installation and other costs. Any other discussion? Seeing none, let's call the question, vote on the item.
Motion passed unanimously.
Okay, on to item number 7.5, which is the ordinance and budget amendment for tobacco hearings. What are your wishes?
Move approval.
Moved by Alderman Olson,
Second.
second by Alderman Pittner. Discussion. Alderman Fuller.
Yeah, so I guess on this one, just a real quick question. When somebody that's been or gotten in trouble for selling to minors or whatever it is requests a hearing and go to the hearing, they're found guilty. I saw the pricing in there, and that's why this is saying, hey, is it coming to us? Do we not charge them for the price of the hearing as well? Because they're the ones that called for it.
City Attorney?
Acting Mayor and Alderman Fuller, no, we don't. It's not under our ordinance to charge out the cost of the hearing. So the city absorbs the cost, and that individual in this instance received a $100 fine.
Wow, okay, thank you.
Scott?
Thank you, Mark. So Steph, can you tell me the ordinance, there's an ordinance change attached to this?
Yes.
Okay, and what will that do?
So what the ordinance change will do is it will remove the requirement to have the city retain an administrative law judge to hear these hearings, and it'll bring those hearings before the city council, which is comparable to our alcohol ordinance hearing process.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a good idea, and part of it was as I looked at the bill, and I actually read through the testimony and everything, and the store owner was not fighting the fact that they sold to a minor. They just were looking at the person was there for 2 weeks or whatever it was, and they were just looking at for maybe some leniency. And going through this process, they don't get that. you're either guilty or you're not. So we spend $3,000 for somebody that really wasn't even fighting the fact that they broke the law. So it makes complete sense to me.
Further discussion? Seeing none, questions called. Let's vote.
Motion passed unanimously.
The next item is 7.6, approval of a budget amendment for employee investigation. What are your wishes?
Move approval.
Moved by Alderman Olson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Yeah.
Seconded by Alderman Blessam. Discussion.
So,
Alderman Fuller.
thank you. I guess I just, I have a question here because I know we initiated investigation. They told us what it would cost. They didn't get either of the investigation reports to us on time, and I would argue that the first investigation report wasn't really that great. Do we have any recourse here at all? I mean, honestly, spending another $50,000 on top of what we already had to spend to do this, I don't even know what to say to that, quite honestly.
Mr. President, members of the council, just a couple of things. This is, I believe, the second budget amendment, just because the scope of that investigation grew so much. I don't think that we anticipate the cost will be an additional $50,000. I think the thought process was that we wanted to make sure that we had enough money that was appropriated to cover the remainder of the bills without having to come back with another budget amendment. So I don't think we anticipate spending the entire amount. But we wanted to have enough that would cover the bills that we have in hand, plus anything else that might be trickling in to finish this up.
Mark?
Alderman Blessam.
Dave, before you go, can you give us a quick summary, Dave, of what the dollars have been here? Because if I remember right, we authorized 50 up front, authorized another 50, and this is a third 50. Do I have that right?
Mr. President, Alderman Blessam, that is correct. It was 50 initially. The first amendment was 50,000, and this would be the third time, so a total of 150. I know we have a bill in hand that I think is in the mid-20s. No?
It's about 33,000, and we have a retainer still with them for 10,000, and they will assess the retainer to the final bill, which will more than likely be the one we would receive next month.
So to sum that up, I mean, with that retainer is on account, so we still have that paid in as well. So with this $50,000, I think would be more than enough to cover it. But we didn't want to have to keep coming back every so many meetings to ask for additional funding.
City Manager.
Acting Mayor Janser, if I may. So I think the primary one that's contributing the most to the cost here is the original investigation. So we had the original investigation, and then we had a follow-up investigation of some things that came out that we needed to, which would be the McLeod investigation, which I believe was probably in the neighborhood of about 17,000 to complete that investigation. And then we had another complaint related to the original investigation that we retained the same firm to do that, which I believe was another $17,000 to do that. But the bulk of the cost is in that first initial investigation, which we do a cost estimate up front. Anything typically involved in attorneys is, this is how many hours we think it's going to be. This is our price per hour. The challenge is that with this one is that the number of hours put in by the attorney's office conducting the investigation is what's driven the cost on that first investigation. So Alderman Blessam, I don't know if that answers your question on the breakdown of the cost here and how we got to this point.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, it's time to vote.
Motion passed unanimously.
Item 7.7 is a property tax exemption resolution for childcare centers. What are your wishes?
I would move approval on the resolution.
Moved by Alderman Olson. Is there a second?
I'll second it so we can have the discussion, I suppose.
Seconded by Alderman Fuller. Discussion, Alderman Olson.
Thank you. I'll start out, Alderman Janser, and then I know that our city assessor will be coming up to give us a presentation. But as part of our last Childcare committee, city assessor made a presentation to us related to an audit that his office had recently gone through. And in that audit, it was determined that a number of childcare centers within our community, the buildings that they are in are not being assessed a property tax because they are in a tax-exempt building. However, the childcare centers are for-profit businesses, and so understanding now that that has been discovered, they would be assessed or levied a property tax. We also have a handful of childcare centers within our community that are levied a property tax because they are in commercial buildings. So we do have a little bit of an inequity between the two. We did not have a quorum at our last childcare committee, but those that were in attendance agreed that it is something that the city council should consider, because as we have met for the last year and a half, the message that we have heard over and over again is that there is not enough childcare, and that for many families it is not affordable. And we believe that if we make the determination that these childcare centers should be levied property taxes, those costs will be put on the shoulders of families, making it more difficult for them to pay for childcare, and it may make it more difficult for those businesses to actually stay open. So with that, if the city assessor would come up and give us his presentation and probably clarify some of the things that I've been saying.
Welcome, City Assessor.
President Janser, Alderwoman Olson. Good summation of the synopsis here. During our 2025, I'm not going to call it audit now, I'm going to call it review, because it was a review. We decided we weren't, another word we're using, put the cart before the horse. Through conversations and listening through the Childcare Committee, they had talked about possible recommendations for a tax exemption for these properties. During our audit, we did realize that there were several properties, an estimated list has been provided to the council, that were falling under an exemption, I would say sheltered under an exemption because of the location that the centers are being operated under. In determining an exemption for the properties, as such, for charitable organizations, which the property owners, which ultimately the exemption for the property is against the property owner. All of these examples that we provided here are those property owners are religious and charitable organizations. So in reviewing our applications for exemption this year, there's a baseline that we have to look at, two fundamentals. Criteria that's been set forth by case law in previous determinations by the state Supreme Court. We have to determine whether or not, number one, is the property owned by a charitable organization. In this case, they are. Number two, we have to determine is the purpose of that lease for those properties for a charitable purpose. So prior to my office and my staff dedicating roughly about 4 weeks of time that we have to take apart from our other duties, I didn't want to put the cart before the horse if the council was going to go ahead and adopt a tax exemption or had other means that they were going to go through on this property tax resolution. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Alderman Fuller.
Ryan, can you help us understand, if we were to go ahead and do this, how much property tax does the city estimate we'd be losing annually? And have we figured, because I haven't heard it within the discussion, is this just for centers, or are we talking about individual homes too, where people can have their personal residence called a daycare and not pay property tax on it?
So the exemption that is allowable by a municipality or a county for properties residing outside the county, I'll just read it out here. It's the governing body of the city for property within the city limits may grant a property tax exemption for the portion of fixtures, buildings, and improvements used primarily to provide early childhood services by a corporation, an LLC, or an organization licensed under Chapter 50, 11, used primarily as an adult care center. Exemption applies regardless of whether or not you own the facility. And then the last subsection here is that, however, the exemption does not apply to property used as a residence. So this does not, the exemption would not benefit in-home daycare facilities.
Okay.
But so hopefully that primary resident credit, if the state passes, it'll definitely help those individuals.
So have you guys estimated then approximately how much property tax we'd lose as a city annually?
Yeah, President Janser,
Please
Alderman Fuller.
continue.
As of right now, our estimate is that we have about 5 childcare facilities that are currently assessed, whether they own the commercial space or lease the commercial space. Their estimated tax, that's consolidated tax, is roughly about $40,000, so about 30% of that 40,000, say $13,000.
Okay. Further discussion? Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman Blessam.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan. So it seems to me we've got two issues going on here that we're talking about at once. And in some ways, I'd actually like to resolve them as separate questions because they actually are. The solution to the second one solves both, which is why it's being presented that way. But the primary issue that we've got right here as we sit right now is that we've got for-profit childcare centers that are operating inside, let's say, a church. And they have not been assessed, the church has not been assessed a property tax because of that, right? That's it. We haven't been handling it quite right, and that's why that's occurring. Do I have that right?
President Janser, Alderman Blessam, yes, my interpretation from the as I mentioned, we've been auditing, reviewing these applications since coming on board here in 2020. My interpretation of Century Code and granting those exemptions is different from the past exemptions that have been granted to the properties.
So if I can continue, Mr. Mayor. So Ryan, just so again I'm clear, is it the right way to think of that you would carve, so let's say they're using a portion of the church for the daycare, you carve out that square footage out of the whole and they would pay that proportional amount of what the property tax would have been, what was, if that was a full commercial property, let's say, or however else they would be?
President Janser, Alderman Blessam, yes. In the 10, I believe it's roughly about 10 properties I provided on the list there, that is an estimate based off our estimated square footage that the facilities are operating. So it's only the portion that is being operated. Again, it's whether or not, so the determination comes down to is whether or not the church or the exempt organization is whether or not they are providing that lease space or their lease agreement as a charitable lease or to a charitable operation to property. So it gets into a lot of I'll say legal jargon on that. Ultimately, a lot of these cases that have come before other jurisdictions end up in abatement through district court and ultimately onto the Supreme Court. But in our process to equalize values and make sure assessments are equal, we can't once we identify a potential unequalized property assessment, we can't turn a blind eye to it without advancing forward properly.
I'm good with Ryan.
Okay. Further discussion? Alderman Olson.
Thank you. So as a reminder to Ryan, can you tell us the amount of dollars that would be brought in if these 10 to 14, whatever it is, number of child care centers and churches, if they will be levied a property tax, what would be the money that would be brought in?
President Janser, Alderwoman Olson, my estimate, which is purely based off an estimate of what we know at this time, would be close to about $100,000 of consolidated tax. So another, again, 30 to 33% of the city's portion, it would be about $30,000. So about half of where we're at.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask go ahead, Scott.
Thank you. So Ryan, you said that the totals that you gave us are consolidated tax, so that's park board, all that. So if we make a decision here tonight, are we making the decision for them also?
President Janser, Alderman Samuelson, yes. Ultimately, as it states in the subsection there, it is up to the governing body of the city to make that determination.
And what you read to, the Century Code, did you say adult daycares?
President Janser, Alderman Samuelson, yes. Included in here, it is for use primarily as early childhood services or used primarily as adult daycare centers.
Okay, I missed thank you. Okay, I guess I probably have, asked the questions for you. I do have a couple maybe for Lisa, if she wouldn't mind.
I'll try.
Okay. So what, as far as the exemption, I know that, like Mike said, the other part's a totally different deal, that if we've missed those. But I guess my question is, what is this exemption supposed to accomplish? And the only reason why I say it is I look at the dollar amount, and I don't know how that makes a huge deal with all the daycares and for what they charge for the parents.
So, Alderman Janser, Alderman Samuelson, we know that the margin for profit in a childcare center is pretty slim. And we are afraid that if they are levied this additional property tax that they have not been including in their budgets in the past years, that might be the determining factor that they close their center, which has a negative impact on a lot of families who rely on that childcare, those childcare services. So that is certainly one of our biggest concerns.
I guess kind of what I was getting at, if you don't mind, is, the ones that are paying property tax right now, and if we exempt them, my understanding is we're trying to make daycare less expensive for parents. And I don't know how $40,000 makes that less expensive when you consider all the kids that could be in that daycare. Are we talking $100 a year for each parent?
I have not run the numbers, so I can't give you an exact number. I know that for some families, $100 a year would make a difference.
Alderman Fuller?
Well, you had a question. Did you want to ask first?
Go ahead.
Okay. I think this is for Lisa again. I'm trying to understand this, and I'm going to give you a direct scenario because I live it every day. I own a building that has a daycare in it. I pay $5,400 a year on property tax on that building. And in our lease, which I make them pay $48,000 a year, which is a pretty good lease. So you take that money out, it means they pay $43,000 a year to me. Let's say that the owner of the building is actually going to take the property tax portion out of the rent. So they drop down to $43,000 a year. I saved them $5,000. They charge anywhere from $800 to $1,100 a child for daycare. How many kids are we going to be able to help? Like, how many parents are still going to be able to pay for that? I don't quite see the correlation,
And again, we have not run the numbers on that. A $5,000 savings to a center might be able to give a slight raise to the employees. It might be able to bring another person in part-time to cover some of those hours that are difficult to cover. This is all very new news to us as well, but knowing all of the constraints and the concerns that we have seen in childcare, we did not want to add another burden to them.
Alderman Pittner?
Thank you, President Janser. Again, this is a question to anybody in the room that can answer this one. But on the corner of University and 8th Street, kitty corner from Little Flower Church, there is a building going up, and it says future home of a daycare center. Who owns that? Who operates that? Who runs that?
I think the city assessor's better with that information.
President Janser, Alderman Pittner, the property itself is owned by the Minot State University Foundation Development, which is imbued by the eyes of the state a taxable entity for that property, unless it's used for academic purposes for the college.
Do you say taxable?
It is taxable.
Okay, correct. And then I have no follow-ups, Ryan. Just comments that, again, I think that is an example of the market taking care of a need, filling the need without a tax exemption in place. I think this is a noble effort, and I think it is a possible solution. I don't know if I'm there at this point when we see things like that being built, or some of the items. I believe in the old YMCA, there's a daycare going in downtown. I think there is a demand for this for daycare. I do believe there's a demand, and I think the market is beginning to fill that as we proceed in time, and that becomes more evident. So I'm still not here on this. Maybe throughout this discussion we can get there, but as of right now, I think this is something best suited for the free market and for an entrepreneur to come in and fulfill that need.
Alderman Blessing.
Yeah, that's more where I'm at too. And the other thing that I'm just going to mention is that I'm actually more concerned as I sit here right now with the couple churches that have this operating where they have this as a source of income. I mean, it's part of how they remain open. And the part that actually gives me a little more heartburn is that they're going to suddenly have a property tax bill coming. Now, under the law, that's required. I don't think that we have a way to solve that except if we head down this resolution path. And on the resolution itself, I'm not there either. The one thing I always want everybody to understand when we do any type of a process that is an abatement of those taxes, it's not, everybody needs to understand, it's not that the city takes in less money. It's that we spread it to the next taxpayer every time. Because if you remember, when we go through our process to determine the levy, we determine the levy dollar amount and then we go divide it up. We don't reduce it because of the abatements at the end. So this will be paid. It's just going to be paid by the very people who have the kids in the daycare, but they're going to pay it in their property tax rather than the other way. And so for me, this doesn't solve it right now. Alderwoman Olson did a great job coming in front of the Economic Development Plan Review Committee that Paul and I are serving on right now. And there was a good discussion there. There's a lot that we need to do to try to figure out how to do it. I'm not positive the government has a big role, and I think that's where the committee has really had a hard time figuring that out. It's not working perfectly in the city of Minot, but as Paul mentioned, there's a market demand here. And it's not registering for me why that's not turning into profitable businesses for the right entrepreneurs. And I think that's really the challenge. The market seems to be broken to a certain extent, and I don't think we have great answers for that right now. And I think we've talked about a few different ways why this isn't going to get us there, but it doesn't mean the conversation stops. I think the community needs to solve this problem for itself and figure out how to do it. I'm not sure we're going to have a big role in that.
Alderman Pittner.
I can tell you why it's hard for this to be solved is because kids are difficult. I got 4 of them at home. I mean, I love my kids and I'll watch them all day long, watching other people's kids. It takes a special type of person to want to do this and fill this need. And I respect that. So if there's another way that we can elevate, individuals, and there are a lot of home daycares. You see them come open all the time when someone has a newborn infant, that those are real restrictions. If there's some sort of database we can collect to put, and I'm not saying that the city, if a private citizen or a Facebook page that can put people in touch with different, you see it all the time. When we first had kids, that was our number one stressor, is finding daycare, and then it's all of a sudden you say, I have an infant. Well, you give me 6 months until this infant is old enough, and then I can take another infant, because there are things in place. So I get why it's difficult, but I agree. I think it's a prime example and of where the private market can fill this need.
Further discussion. Alderman Olson.
Yeah, thank you. Just my final statements. I was questioned on how much of a difference it could make for a family or for a child care center owner if they had this reduction. Well, I would argue that the difference for our 50,000 residents or our $13,000 or our 13,000 homes, however it is, will be minuscule. In fact, it's money that we have not been collecting, and so really it doesn't change our budgeting that much. And if it does, it might be a few dollars for all of us as property owners. However, the impact that it will have on those child care centers, and more importantly, the families, I think is going to be incredibly detrimental. And if we don't take action tonight, the city assessor will have to move forward and will have to levy a property tax against the properties that the child care centers reside within. So I would just encourage you to consider all of that. I know that many of you have been impacted by child care needs in the past, and I think it's an important step that the city can take that is not a high cost and something that we can do. It's allowed through Century Code, and I would encourage you to consider that.
Alderman Pittner.
Final comment, and another concern, and I agree that they're all noble causes. I don't think anybody's arguing that this is a real issue. And again, the slippery slope that I go down, and I'm not opposed to some abatements and some incentives in some way. When does the next deficit? When does the next? Now we need more people putting water mains in. Well, if you got a water main business and you're located in the city of Minot, you're tax exempt. I don't want this to also be a precedent set going forward that other uses are allowable to be abated just because there's a need. I think it's time to let the market kind of try to figure this one out.
And just for clarification, I don't know that Century Code allows us to offer a tax abatement to someone that's doing some other kind of infrastructure work.
Alderman Samuelson.
Thank you. One final thing, and, Mike had said this too, that, when property tax exemptions are implemented, the amount that the city collects rarely goes down, which means that everybody that doesn't have an exemption is paying for that. I want to give you a little bit of an example. We have property tax exemptions or relief for Renaissance zones, TIF districts, and new home 2-year exemption. In 2023, those amounted to $112,713. In 2024, it was $414,332. In 2025, it's $572,499. I think everybody can see the direction that we're going. These are exemptions that we allow that the taxpayers that don't get exemptions are paying for. This is not going to stop until we say no. And I know that there's a couple people out there that will probably email me when I say this, but this would have been solved by Measure 4. And it comes up again and again about different places that they're having a problem paying their property tax. And it's not getting any better. And we're not going to end up with any relief from our legislature. It's got to stop. We can't keep paying more on our property tax.
Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, President Chancellor. Again, just a point of clarification, Renaissance Zone is a temporary, it is an investment. It is an ability for the city to allow an abatement so that the property owner can invest in their property, and it does come back on the tax roll at an increased value. And again, I have a few examples. I'm not gonna bore people with them, but again, you go from having, properties that are assessed $5,600 in 108 Main Street, I believe this one was, $5,600 through their investment, come back on the tax roll at $8,900 a year. So again, those are investments, and I get it. We can sit here and say it's abatements. There are a full on for the life of the building abatement is not the same as a Renaissance Zone. I just want to make sure that the public is clear on that.
Okay.
One last thing, and I disagree with you, Paul, but the fact is every year they keep going up and up and up. And the city collects more and more money that we're making up for. All the property taxpayers that have to pay property tax that are not getting relief, and the numbers show it keeps going up.
Seeing no further discussion, time to vote on the motion.
The motion failed 2-4 with dissents from Blessum, Fuller, Pittner, and Samuelson.
Okay, item 7.8 is the 2025 Airport Passenger Facility Charge application. What are your wishes?
Make a motion to approve.
Well, moved to approve by Alderman Fuller,
Second.
seconded by Alderman Blessum. Discussion? Seeing none, call question.
The motion passed unanimously.
Item 7.9 is a alcohol beverage license for Ironwood Hospitality, DBA, the Beowulf Grill. I believe this is the one out at the golf course. What are your wishes?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Paul, second by Rob. Discussion? Seeing none?
I just want to publicly state, and let the council members know too, Ironwood Hospitality is the LLC. I don't know if they are for sure on the Beowulf Grill. They are still kind of coming up with a few ideas, but that's what they asked for me to put on this for now. And when they fully open, because they're hoping to open by about the 21st with some food and some alcohol. But when they fully open the restaurant, it might change the actual restaurant name, but not the actual LLC. So I just wanted to put
And
Alderman Blessing.
Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, Michaela, legally, the LLC holds the license, is that right? So their DBA really isn't material, right?
correct.
Okay.
I wanted it publicly out there that you won't see it again if they don't show up as Beowulf Grill.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, let's vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
That takes us to item number 8 in our action items, which is personal appearances. This is an opportunity for those who wish to speak to the council about anything they have to discuss or to speak to us about. We ask that the speakers limit themselves to 5 minutes, and we have Travis DeBlatney here first.
Thank you, Mayor Janser. Many have referenced you as leader, but you're now mayor, so appreciate your stepping up to that role. Mayor and city council members, there's a number of things that you discussed tonight that tripped a few triggers for me, but the first thing I guess that what I want to request out of this body is that you bring to your next agenda the consideration of moving this section of your agenda to number 1. Personal appearances go right up to the top or near the top anyway, and so that when the public comes to these meetings, they have an opportunity to present you with some of their thoughts on some of the things that you'll be talking about and discussing later. I think it would be, you get a lot more interaction, valuable input and feedback. Obviously, you got to limit the time because I could see an expansion, but I think you get more public participation in this meeting by doing that rather than us, having our ability to make comments are essentially after the meeting is over and the business has been already transacted. So I'd appreciate it if you would bring that up, consider that, discuss that amongst yourselves. Another item that I think would bring more engagement with the public, and that would be to take the budget schedule that you posted today and publish it, get it out there to the public, let them know. Because once again, when we come down to those last hearings, you've largely made all your decisions, and public input seems fruitless to me to come in at the last meeting or two. We really aren't a part of the process if we're not able to be a part of the process, right? We're just there to give some feedback at the end when your decisions have largely been made. And so I would ask that be done and considered as well. No different than your neighborhood, meetings that you're having. Let's engage the public in these budget discussions right on through the process and let them know what's going on rather than in October. I want to make a couple comments about local preference. I agree 100% with Rob Fuller. Commissioner Pittman, you made or Councilman Pittman, the comment about value, that you look at the taxpayer value, and I think that by only looking at the dollar spent today and the decisions we make today, that you only think they matter today is kind of short-sighted, and I say that because in Minot, we have a shortage of housing. We got a problem with that. Well, why do we have a shortage of housing? Well, I'm sure there's a long string of reasons why that's the case, but the long and short of it is we have 1 or 2 active builders left in our community. We've got builders that have left the community, that have been here their entire lives and haven't sold their business because they apparently don't have anybody stepping up, because there's this, this evolution of other people coming in and doing the work. And I think Rob made, the pertinent comment that we bring the skills here so that the skills live here and we're not importing them from Minnesota in the case of Wagner. There's a lot to be said about preference. And I'll tell you, as a former implement dealer in Minot that would bid on certain things that the city needed, there's one thing I learned, and that is if we wanted the bid, we needed to give it away. It needed to be at net. There was no profit margin in it any time, ever. And if we ever tried to make a profit selling something to the city, we wouldn't get the bid. So don't kid yourselves into thinking that somebody's getting fat on the hog. They're not. And I would also dare to defend our contractors in the same way, because you look at, there's certainly something called scale even in contracting. And I think it's more relevant in the risk that a contractor has to take. A big contractor can take risk easier than a small contractor because it doesn't necessarily mean his impending end if he screws up, right? So he can get more aggressive. There's so many unknowns in any type of contracting that it's a guessing game, especially some of the bigger projects. And so just to give that deference to a local, smaller contractor would go a long, long way. And I guess in my lifetime that I've been here, I've seen less local contractors, more out-of-state contractors. It's just been a process and a cycle, and that's what a result of hiring them leads to. So I would ask you to think hard about how you do that and how much sense it makes, because I really do think that Rob's on the right track. License plate readers. I'm going to pick on Councilman Olson a little bit here. She made a comment about believing in civil liberties, but then she qualified it and said that we already give up our civil liberties when we walk into a store with our credit card, or we walk down their aisles because they have cameras. Well, that's fine and dandy. You don't believe in civil liberties if you think that's okay, and I don't. And I think this is a slippery slope. It's just another one of those kind of things that we don't want as citizens, that we get forced upon us. And ask yourselves, what are we really saving? Who are we protecting? The crime has happened in these cases. We're not stopping any crime from happening, but we are taking away the liberties of all the rest of us that are non-criminal type people, which is the majority. And so I think that's the first person that needs the consideration. The other thing, you talked about spending $150,000 on some investigations. I'll guarantee you'll be spending $150,000 more 2 or 3 times if you get those readers, because we're all human, and you will have those issues within your departments. Somebody will say, I'm going to use this tool, and you guys are going to get to solve the problem that results from it. I think you really have to consider the slippery slope we're on there.
Travis? Sorry, 5 minutes goes fast, I know.
Gotcha. I'll quit shortly here. One other thing, I guess, I'd like to see you bring up in your budget discussions is the subsidizing that the city's doing and busing the Minot public school kids around. I think all of you know that the majority of your riders are getting bused to and from school. And I think Minot Public Schools needs to pay their share, not the city. It's not your guys' job to figure out how to fund that. And then finally and last, I won't be very popular when I make this comment, and only those of you that are probably my age or older will understand it and respect it, but when it comes to daycare, we do have a choice. We have a personal choice, and it's called making a sacrifice when you decide to have children. You deciding what's most important in your life, whether it's the children that you committed to having and taking care of them, or whether it's the cell phone, the TV, the job, the fancy car, the boats, the trips every weekend, the hockey games, you name it. Our parents sacrificed. Some of you might have been the parents that sacrificed. They didn't have all those things, and they took care of their kids, and daycare wasn't a problem. Somebody stayed home and took care of them because they knew it was their responsibility. And I think we got to stop figuring out how to socialize our lifestyle by putting that on all of the rest of us as taxpayers. Thank you.
This is personal appearances. It is an opportunity for people to speak to the council for 5 minutes.
Mayor Janser and members of the council, my name is Lisa Hermosillo. One, I do want to thank you guys for allowing the opportunity for members of the community to come up and speak. I know that's not something that's offered everywhere, so I just want to thank you for that. But I was a close friend of Leif Snyder, and I'm also here with a good friend, Corey, who was also a really close friend of his. And I just wanted to take a minute to personally thank Alderman Fuller for being so instrumental in helping make this proclamation for Leif happen. He thought very highly of you and absolutely loved getting to know you and appearing on podcast episodes with you. Thank you for giving him an opportunity to have his voice heard along with the Dakotan, which many miss viewing him on there. It means a lot to his close friends and his family members to see him recognized in this way. I also want to thank the members of the council for their friendships and frequent acts of kindness to Leif, whether that was giving him a ride home or to events or just simply phone calls. I know that he often mentioned phone calls with Alderwoman Olson, and he was very appreciative of that. And so I just want to thank you for that as well. He made a commitment more than most of us do to be here at these meetings. And one of the biggest things he really pushed was for all of us to stay involved and to have a voice in how we feel and how we think things are going. And this proclamation mirrored him perfectly. And I hope we all take things from that going forward and how we are active in our community. So it's really great to see that his legacy will be remembered in this way. And yes, losing him was a big and devastating loss for our community. So I just want to thank Mayor Janser as well for your support in this. That means a lot. Thank you.
Public appearances. It's an opportunity to have 5 minutes of conversation with City Council.
Well, I came here with a few things to say. My name is Josiah Royce, but now you guys give me a lot to say. To pick up where Travis left off and to agree with Mr. Blessum, that camera system is absolutely going to be abused. How can we know that? Because other systems, even less advanced than it, have already been abused. Now, like I said, I had a few things I planned to say here tonight, but there's a lot more that needs to be said now. It opened a can of worms. I was advised not to say this. I was even begged not to say this. But it's time to be said. Aside from recent things that are, coming out about our police department, there's been so much for years, and there's a lot of people that have confided their stories in me as I've confided in them, with my own stories about Minot police abuse and harassment, brutality, and they don't feel like they can bring it to you guys. They don't feel like they can bring it to the police department. They don't feel like they can submit complaints, because what if it actually makes it worse? I have a friend whose girlfriend was sexually harassed, one might say molested, a couple of years ago by a Minot police officer. They get away with this stuff all the time. They have cameras. They have body cameras. Those cameras should be reviewed at the end of every day. Whether it's AI or human doing it, fast forward to whatever interactions they have with the public and watch it. They get away with these things all the time. I sent most of you an email. Some of them got kicked back. It said Robert Fuller's didn't go through. I'll have to email you later. For some grievances that I was going to list only there and not talk about here, but now I feel compelled. I've had Fourth Amendment violations, home invasion, twice in 1 month. Cops came in, no warrant, no knock, no nothing. Came in and pointed guns right at my chest. Now, one might say, don't make it so personal, but you know what? That felt pretty personal. They tried calling me twice before coming in, calling because they scanned my license plate. They knew who they were coming in there for. I've got stories that could go on for days and days. But ultimately, talking about security and this, that, and the other, you know, a lot of people believe in self-security. Many celebrated when we got constitutional carry passed. I don't know anybody that really even does it. Why? And I encourage them, why? You've got constitutional carry, you don't even need a permit. They're afraid of the police. And there's story after story of cops shooting somebody because, you know, thought he might have a weapon and, you know, might have been reaching for it. It was just the seatbelt. Too many stories like that. People are afraid. So you talk about increased security? It's not how it works. Mr. Blessum said it right. He was quoting the Founding Fathers reference to say that trading freedom for security, you lose both and you deserve neither one. Now, I want to have security and I want freedom. I look at the things that we're talking about today and I ask, how far have we fallen from the Constitution? Have any of you, I don't even know if the positions you hold require you to swear an oath to it. I know it doesn't require you to read it. A lot of people swear an oath to the Constitution and they don't read it. It's like a lot of people go to church, don't actually read the Bible. They don't study it themselves, they just submit to church leadership. We're supposed to, if Christians should obey the Bible rather than the church leadership, same applies for the Constitution to the people of this country. Do I obey, you know, local law enforcement or whatever? Not if it's not constitutional. With the mayor seat opening up and stuff, and there's curiosity, it's like, I wonder if we'll finally get a mayor that actually prioritizes the Constitution. I've spoken to you before about the premise of a constitutional sheriff. Anybody ever heard of constitutional mayor? Wouldn't that be something? I could go on for days and days, but I don't have that much time. I'll come back and talk to you guys about it again, sometime soon. But ultimately, another founding father quote, government can't increase without freedom decreasing. I was to look for more ways to expand the government, including this new police station. That's my understanding that it could potentially be up to $50 million. Good grief, people. I don't want to pay for that. And with all this buzzing security and stuff, there's a lot of things I'm just not down with, and a lot of people feel the same. This harassment from the cameras that we're concerned about, like I said, it happens already. I sold a vehicle because I was getting harassed by police all the time. Next guy says, hey man, what's up? I'm getting pulled over all the time. I've been profiled. I gave a truck to my oldest brother. He was getting pulled over all the time. He's been targeted. For so long, I've been targeted for knowing the law and for abiding by the Constitution, asking them to do the same. Knowing my civil rights, it doesn't do much good when everyone wants to trample them at the point of a gun. Years ago, 2011, my life was threatened for correctly refusing my driver's license when I was just a passenger in a traffic stop. I really didn't want to tell that story, but I felt like it was an act of God to compel me to bring that one up, because if my eyes serve me right, the man who threatened my life that day is in this room now. And you better believe I'm not comfortable anywhere in Minot with that sort of thing going on. That being said, I'll wrap up just with this. You guys know what this is. This is a petition. They have them upstairs. It's a petition so we can actually have an election for new mayor. I was told we need 292. I went out and got close to 500, turned them in today. That being said, it's my intention to run for mayor, as I would be a constitutional mayor, and what I mean by that is any policy, anything that conflicts with the Constitution, as the forefathers wrote, is hereby null and void. I believe in freedom. I'm here for the Constitution and mega. Thank you.
This is public appearances. It's an opportunity for people to come forward and speak to the council.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ron Lochtow. I live in Minot, and my comments are directed directly at Rob Fuller. Last week, Rob, you promised me a videotape. You haven't delivered. Are you going to deliver?
Absolutely. We've had kind of a busy week, so I apologize that I wasn't able to run out there and get the video that you want to see of yourself at my store, but I will get it to you.
You promised to send it to my cousin Jared, and he
Sure.
would transfer it to me.
Sure.
Okay. What does it take to do 1 or 2 minutes on your cell phone to get it to him so he can get
It doesn't take 1 or 2 minutes. It takes me quite a bit of time to go search through the video, to find the video, to cut it out, and to send it to you guys. Again, I will do such a thing. But you're up here talking about this with me at city council?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm pointing out you made a promise and you didn't keep it. And you're a city councilman. That's what I'm pointing out, and that's what I'm getting across to other people.
You're in here talking about something that happened 2 years ago at my private business that has nothing to do with the city, my job as a city council member, or anything I've done here.
Hey, this is my private time to address the council.
Fair enough.
Is that correct? Acting Mayor, is that correct? This is my private time to address the council?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's my private time to bring up something that I feel one of the council members has not done. Is that correct? It's my opportunity to speak as a citizen.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I don't appreciate you.
This is public appearances, opportunity for folks to speak to the council.
Hello, everyone. My name's Jeff McDougall. I'll just take a minute or two, but regarding the cameras on the license plates, did that pass? Are you going to go ahead with that? I wasn't quite clear.
The current situation is we tabled that to first look at a proposal for a policy that the department would use with it.
Oh, okay. I wasn't quite sure about that. Thank you. My thought on cameras is you folks work for the people in the city of Minot, right? You're here to serve the people. My understanding, is that correct? Yeah, generally. So my thought is, you're essentially our employees. Why don't we have cameras in your offices? The police department, the mayor, the attorneys, on and on and on. We don't have to see the paperwork you're doing, but let's put the cameras on you guys. I'd like to have you guys bring that up and maybe put that on the agenda in the future. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
We're still on public appearances, opportunity for people to address the council this evening.
Good evening, members of the council. My name is Lyanne Ziltinger, and I want to share some brief thoughts concerning the special election that's coming up for the mayoral position. I don't have a seat on the dais, nor would I want one. I would not want to be in your positions at any time. But I want to thank you, each of you, for having shown the grace and the dignity while dealing with some pretty deep wounds to our city over the last 8 to 9 months. Just when we thought we were through with all of that, or at least the worst of it, from personal view, we got hit with a report of an unimaginable behavior. The citizens are reacting with shock and anger, disgust and humiliation. And I understand the want of an election. I understand the want to fix something, do something, because we feel powerless. But the question needs to be asked, is a special election in the best interest of our city right now? it is vital for the council, is it vital for the council to continue to function? We have a policy in place, and it seems to be working. I heard that Acting Mayor Janser has been kind of being fed by the fire hose, is that what you said? This past week, but it's working, and so we have that, and it's been working for decades. It wasn't that everything fell apart within minutes of receiving the resignation. He stepped up to the plate. He's there as our policy states. This special election won't happen within the next week. It won't happen within the next month. This is going to go into about mid-August, maybe later. And by that time, we're into the middle of the budget hearings, and then January 1st, whoever runs for council, for mayor, and whoever wins, and everybody else that wants to run, will start all over again in January. And this budget, or this special election, is going to cost us $20,000. And I don't know that that is worth it to do it when we already are going to have another special election. This is not the good time. I think we need to have some space, some quiet time. We've got other things we can do. You've got the budget. You've got all these things going on. The city needs time to relax. I don't think we need reactionary people running for mayor. That's fine if they want to, but I don't think that's the best thing for the city. I just want to thank the council members for carrying on during all of this time, the last 8 or 9 months. You come in, you do it with a smile most of the times in here, and it has been a tough year. I hope that we can move forward and that everyone thinks about what is really best for our city at this point. Thank you.
Evening.
My name is Jedediah Rader. City Council and Mr. I want to say Mr. Janser, but it's not correct, sorry. Not President Janser, but anyway, sorry. I'm a little tongue-tied, first time, apologize. So, just getting the bugs out. So I really appreciate all of your hard work. I know it's not easy to be in public service, and I really appreciate you coming in every day, smiling. I know it's hard when we have moral failures and things like that are happening, just getting in there and getting things done. I really appreciate all the hard work. One thing I would say that I was really concerned with this flock service is I was listening to some scientists talking, but this is a lot of this advanced AI. You can really pair with advanced AI is now pairing with other hackers, and pretty much anything you put on the internet can be hacked. And it's only a matter of time before encrypted, not encrypted data is hacked. So I know the U.S. government, other governments out there are really working hard to, better their anti-hacking ability. That's not the correct word. I'm not that type of expert, but so I would really caution us moving forward on this. This is not what we want for our community, I don't believe, because there is a lot of a breach, I will say, of privacy, and I'm very concerned about that. I do agree with you. When we go in our grocery stores, they have pictures of us, but at least with like a lot of those closed circuit cameras, I've been in that route and that part of it before, being in retail, it's all wired in the store. So your photo is not getting out there via Walmart or something like that, unless, you do a crime and they take pictures, goes to Minot PD, things like that. So I think there's a huge difference between, closed circuit systems and your face being a closed circuit system where, there might be a security guard who might see that, and actually what we're talking about here with this flock system. So I would encourage some caution with this, and probably not do this, because this is not going to help us long term. So thank you, appreciate your time.
Public appearances, opportunity to speak to the council about any item on your mind. Seeing no one move towards the podium, I guess we'll move on. Item number 9, miscellaneous and discussion items. There are no details to that tonight unless somebody has something they want to talk about. Alderman Fuller, I think you had your hand up first, or?
I do have something.
Okay,
Go ahead.
You
Lisa.
both get to talk, so.
All right,
let's-
thank you. I just want to respond to one of our speakers who made some very serious accusations against the Minot Police Department without any detail. And if any of those statements are true, they should be investigated. And if this individual does not feel comfortable having them investigated by the Minot Police Department, then he should reach out to the Ward County Sheriff's Department and have it investigated, because we do not stand behind the police department making poor choices by harassment, by any of those. But it needs to be looked at. And if those accusations have any ounce of truth, they need to be investigated.
Alderman Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson, or Mr. Mayor. So I just wanted to bring this up real quick. Last week, a business owner here in town reached out to me. He just got done building a new building out on the east side of town, north of dusk till dawn. Over the last year, they built the building. They've fulfilled all the city's requirements. 2 of those requirements were that they had to put retention ponds in because they're not tied into the storm sewer system in the city of Minot. Storm sewer actually ends at about 55th Street, and they're farther out at 72nd, like I said, just north of dusk or dawn. The city required this of them because they have a large property and they were worried about the runoff that may occur out there because there's no curb and gutter, there's no roads, there's no storm sewer or nothing. They use water from the city of Minot and that is it. So anyway, they did everything they were supposed to do. Now fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, he receives his first water bill from the city of Minot. And to his surprise, there's a charge on his water bill for $850.36 for storm sewer services, which he is not tied into. He contacted me. I said, you better get a hold of the city. I think that's a mistake. So he contacted the city. I believe he got a hold of somebody in the engineering department. And an email was sent back to him. Turns out it was a mistake, but just by a miscalculation. He doesn't owe $850 a month. He owes $425.68 per month for use of our storm sewer system, which he is not tied into. I don't know if this is a common practice in the city. I mean, I understand we gotta bill for future development and future build and everything like that. But we're asking an individual who just spent $300,000 to $400,000 to build retention ponds, moving dirt and everything he needed to do at the city's request, to spend another $5,100 a year for storm sewer services, which he is not tied into or does not use. Now, I had a conversation with Jason today when I was out there, and I understand again that someday we may have to pull those services down there. But they are currently not there, and I don't, at least me personally, I don't believe that anybody in our city should have to pay for any service that they are not tied into, and it's not of their own accord, it's of ours. We don't even offer the service down there. So I guess, in having said that, I'd like to make a motion and direct the city staff to revise this ordinance or any other ordinance that we have that doesn't allow the ability to maybe remove a charge or change the charge because it's excessive. Again, I don't quite understand why we would bill somebody so much money for something they're not using. And in the interim, while we're maybe looking for staff to bring us back some direction as to how this policy could change, I would think we would want to waive or suspend these fees for any individuals that are looking to have something like this happen. So until we address this, they know whether they owe us or what they owe us.
I'll second the motion.
Can I just get
Do you want me to
clarification?
clear it
'Cause
up?
That was a really long motion.
Yep, I would like to make,
Is it basically to direct city staff to revise any ordinances restricting the ability to waive or change fees?
well, close. But what I would like the city staff to do is to look at the ordinances and revise them, incorporating language that enables the city to remove charges for services that the customers aren't actually using, or lessen them, whichever, again, I'm going to rely on staff to come up with the language that they think is appropriate. And then the second portion of that was, while we're looking at this, to maybe either suspend or waive the fees that are sitting out there, so people don't have to pay this and then we have to pay them back. Let's see what we're going to do with this before we make this decision.
So my second's good. So, yeah, if I can continue from there then. So, first of all, to the city attorney, is there, the second part of what Rob is talking about, I don't know that we have a decent way to waive ordinance. I think if it's on the books, we have to enforce it as written today. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that we would continue to enforce the current ordinance. We could hold perhaps the fees in abeyance if that's something that the council wants to entertain, but it's also, so the email that I have in front of me relates to storm sewer fees. Are we contemplating holding all storm sewer fees until that evaluation can be made by staff?
No, I don't think that's what I'm requesting. I'm just saying, so if somebody's tied into storm sewer and they're using our storm sewer system, they should pay the fee just like everybody else. What I'm saying is these people that aren't tied into our system, whether it be storm sewer, sanitary sewer, whatever it is they're being charged for, I'm just saying maybe just pause these fees for the interim until we figure out what we would like to do with this ordinance or any language that's brought back to us, if possible. If it's not possible, I guess it's not possible.
And the possibility of it, I would have to defer to city management to advise if that's something that can be completed.
I guess I, for one, would be interested in knowing how we got to the current system that we're on and how long that ordinance has been around and what the background on this, because usually there is some. Jason, do you want to weigh in?
Sure. Alderman Janser, members of council. So storm sewer management fees, they're set in ordinance, just like you said, Alderman Blessum. Basically, there's two different ways they're looked at, commercial or residential versus commercial. Probably the misunderstanding is whether or not someone is, quote, tied into a storm sewer. I guess the other way to look at it is every piece of property contributes runoff to one of our drainage basins around town. So these fees cover the costs of basically our storm sewer department to do the maintenance on all the storm sewer systems that we have around town, be it a ditch, there's different drainways through town, culverts, things of those nature. So like the charge that Alderman Fuller was talking about, that is actually two charges. There's a maintenance fee. It's about 50-50. There's a maintenance fee and then there's a development fee. So the money that's raised from the development fee then goes into basically an account, and that's what we use for storm sewer development projects at Lance and his department, where we upgrade or add storm sewer where there wasn't storm sewer before. So I don't know if I answered anybody's questions or not, but that's kind of where these come from and why they're charged. Basically, if you have a utility bill, you have a storm sewer charge that goes along with it.
Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mr. Janser. So Jason, does this parcel in particular drain into the city sewer stormwater system at some point?
Alderman Janser, Alderman Pittner, yeah. It's annexed into the city, so, his property drains into a ditch. And eventually, if that ditch silts in, if the culvert gets plugged, it's something that we would be responsible for repairing or enhancing or something somewhere down the road.
Let me continue. And again, I'm not necessarily opposed to looking at this. I'm just trying to understand. And then, so when those retention ponds, the purpose of a retention pond is basically you've created enough of an impermeable surface that now when the water runoff, like I'll use an example. If Dakota Square Mall was built today, they would probably be forced to have a retention pond at some place, correct?
Alderman Janser, Alderman Pittner. So basically, the idea behind a retention pond, and this is getting into the city engineers world, but basically, your runoff flows off of a parcel post-development can't exceed what they were before the development. So basically, that detention pond will then hold that water, and it'll meter out, so it releases at the same rate as if the development property was never developed.
I'm sure you're going to put that into a nice PowerPoint presentation, and similar to how asphalt is made. But again, I'm just trying to wrap my head around all of that and the purpose. Because again, and I understand, like, to put that kind of money into retention ponds and then to have a monthly fee, substantial monthly fee. I could get why there'd be some sticker shock there, but I'm just trying to understand the logic and the reasoning behind it.
Alderman Blessum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jason, so I want to tie this for just a second to another issue that you and I spoke about, which is, in this case, it was I believe a new residential property where, in order to turn the water on and get it tested and all that stuff, we had to start up service for the new homeowner in the future. I mean, he's going to move in a few months. And it's not that those things are at all exactly the same, but it does raise a question for me, and maybe also just overall for Harold to think about. These are the kind of things that I think city staff on the front lines, whether it's water billing or whoever it is, they're taking the brunt of these, right? People are calling in saying, what in the heck is this charge? Why am I being charged for this? I don't move in for 3 months. How can I have a water bill, right? And I guess my question is, do we have a feedback loop that's coming from that feedback that could sort of inform us on some of these ordinances that at least the public thinks doesn't make sense? We can talk through it then and see, oh no, there's really no other good way to do it. We kind of have to, right? I think we can kind of get our minds there, but do we have that feedback loop going? Because this is a different issue, but it kind of rang the same way in my mind. We have a guy now paying, not only was it the water being turned on, but it's also going to turn on his runoff charges. It's going to turn on his sewer charges. It's also going to turn on his trash, even though he doesn't live there, and he can't live there for a couple more months. And so, we worked through that one, so I'm not too worried about that discretionary part of it. But it does make me wonder, do we have some things in ordinance that maybe if we looked at them wouldn't make sense and we could make some adjustments, and do we have that feedback loop? And either one of you, if my question makes sense, please.
I guess I can. You want me to start
Go
here?
ahead, you go first.
I guess what I can say regarding a feedback loop, before I usually bring stuff to council, I base it, not on one person calling and saying there's a problem. There's currently things that we're looking at revising some ordinances for the trash pickup and some different things that we'll be bringing to council here in the next couple months. And that's based on months and multiple phone calls and multiple incidents. I've worked for the city of Minot for 20 years. I've worked in public works specifically for about 12 or 13. We get these questions every now and again where people, they built a house on the edge of town. There's not an urban street. So they don't think that they're contributing to storm sewer. So they question that bill. Usually I explain it to them. They're maybe not happy about it, but in the end they accept it as, that's how we charge and that's how we do storm sewer. So, as far as the feedback loop, I basically gauge it on how many calls or how big of an issue I kind of gauge it to be. But, we could certainly modify that if that's a desire of council as we see these things.
If I may, so I'm kind of doing this on the fly because, other than coming up to the dais tonight and seeing this and not really knowing what it was pertaining to, I'm starting to kind of put the pieces together here as through the conversation. So I'm assuming that this must be in some sort of district that we've created, that we've tied fees to, that when somebody builds, then that triggers these types of fees, correct?
This is a new property that I think they just moved into. So once you start, he's connected to our water system. So once you start a utility bill, then it starts all the other utility services that go with it, so storm sewer.
I guess my question to go a little bit further than what Alderman Blessum did, and this is something that I'll try to work with staff to try and figure out some answers to, because I do understand Alderman Fuller's concerns as well as the citizens. That's a pretty good sticker shock. I wouldn't want to be surprised with a $5,000 a year bill that I wasn't planning on before I built my building. And so at some point, I think we need to figure out a way to communicate these impacts earlier in the process so that when they're designing their stormwater retention basin and those kinds of things, that we can do these calculations in advance and say, oh, by the way, not only will you potentially have the cost of the retention basin, but because it feeds into our system, there is this fee that's associated with it that we could then calculate out and provide in advance. And I don't know whether that happened here or not. Again, I'm learning on the fly. I have an email and a bill to go off of. But I do think that's something that maybe we as staff can do, that we can be more transparent at the beginning of the process of, you build this building, it's going to trigger this, and this. And here's your immediate potential costs, and here's what the ongoing long-term costs will be, so they can make that decision knowingly beforehand, so they don't get these types of surprises. So that I can understand as well. But again, I need some time to talk with staff and figure out some of what's going on here.
Mark? If I
Alderman
could,
Blessing.
yeah, just one follow-up, Jason. So with the particular property that Alderman Fuller's talking about, what's the ultimate destination of that water? Does it hit the ditch along Highway 2 as it comes in and go down to Livingston Coulee? Is it going over land in a neighboring property? Where does the water end up?
Lance, I'm looking for help. I think all that stormwater runs north and eventually goes across a field, and I'm not sure where it goes from there, but I'll hand it off.
I'm here to save you. So he did great tonight describing what that is. What ends up happening is the water from this property will drain out to the 72nd Street ditch, then eventually it crosses the road and then heads outside of city limits through a farmer's field.
Okay, so if I can continue on that. So in this particular case, like I get where you were headed with everything, Jason. That it makes sense. If you got a bill, we're going to have this on it. But in this case, we're not going to have city infrastructure, right? That's how that's just going to be. And so he's paying for something he can't possibly ever take advantage of. That one seems a little bit strange to me. I think I can get behind the logic of some others, but that one does seem a little bit strange, that he's paying for something he can't use.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessum, you're going to have instances that yes, will make a little bit more sense than others. Properties on the edge of town where, they're going to drain into a ditch, and maybe I'll throw a number out there because I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but maybe it's 50 feet of ditch that the city has to own and maintain. It goes through a 40-foot culvert, and then we're done with it. Where you may have other areas throughout the city where maybe in an industrial park, you go up north, and it's all ditches. So the city's in there trying to maintain some of these ditches and ponds, and frankly, they're a little harder to maintain than a storm sewer pipe. Storm sewer pipes are designed to be self-cleaning. Ditches, because of generally their profile and how flat they can be, can give our maintenance folks a lot of headache, which is why we prefer pipes wherever we can. However, in some areas around the edge of town, pipes might not make sense. So I think what we're hearing as staff is we need to, if you want us to come together with some sort of policy and bring that back to you to look at instances like this or cases, we can certainly do that. But I think from a staff standpoint, especially for my department who does the math and tries to figure out the number of units for the Public Works Department, we would want to make sure we have a consistent policy that we can base out these decisions on. And then if someone didn't agree with that, they could bring that back to you and you could review it like we do on some other things where we have a policy disagreement.
So if I can continue, Mr. Mayor, I guess just overall, my general thought here is, the starting point in that discussion is, if the person paying the bill isn't getting the service, that's where we start. And we have to consider whether we have to adjust that somehow. I don't know, I think we have to start there, and after that, I'm all in. Then, yeah, all the rules need to apply and everybody needs to be there, or at least scaling it. You know, if a portion of a ditch is what the main effect is here, I assume right now the rates are very similar, or is it a unit-based system? Is that what you're saying, that is adjusted by the way that you do it? Could be that it's doing exactly what I just described.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessum, the way that this works, especially on large properties like this, is our department will look at the total area of the property, and then we will subtract off the larger areas of pervious space. So like in this case, the detention pond, or if they have a portion of the property that might be unused, it's still grass or something like that. So basically, it's not rooftop, parking lot, graveled area, something like that. We'll subtract those areas off, and that was the recalculation that we did to try to reduce that cost as much as we could as staff, minus an ordinance change. And so then we take that number, whatever the square footage is of impervious, we divide that by 7,000. That's the unit that is in the ordinance. And then the number of units is multiplied by the fee rates that are set in the budget. And we do that for all properties throughout the city. Your typical residential rate is just a flat rate. When it comes to commercial and industrial properties, generally speaking, they're almost all impervious. We're not going to go through and try to subtract out parking lot islands and these little areas of green space because it just doesn't add up to anything in the calculation. But where you have, potentially acres of space that's green space that wouldn't contribute to that runoff to the effect that an impervious surface would, then we try to make that calculation and reduce that fee.
So if I can continue, just one last thing with that, Lance, just because it popped in my head. I spent 12 years at MLT. I know when I was there and I was ahead of the facility, parking lot was a lot bigger than it is today. They actually expanded their green space towards the road, and I know that's a runoff area that we're talking about a lot lately. So did they actually get credit for that back then as that green space came up? Did that lower their share of the runoff water that they're paying for?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Blessum, I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, but that's the idea, right? I mean, if in a case like that, I get the island thing, that makes sense, but they actually made a conscious decision to make the parking lot smaller and bring green space back into it. So to me, I would hope that those things adjust over time, because it seems like that's the calculation.
That's correct.
Yeah.
City Manager.
While we have Lance up here, so you talked about the calculations you run through. At what point do we do the calculations on that? Did we do that early in the process as we're designing and approving the retention pond basins and those kinds of things? Or did we do it after construction and then calculate out the bill to apply to the water bill?
Mr. City Manager, I believe that typically the way that this works is the entire property is calculated with it being impervious, because generally that's what happens. Some of these anomalies that happen, like these very large industrial properties, these are the ones that I think are creating some issues, and that's probably the part of the process that we would need to adjust is at what point does that calculation happen? Because most of the time when a commercial building permit is pulled or industrial, it's almost all impervious, so there wouldn't have to be a calculation that's needed. It's on these mixed sites that have a real large detention basin, or maybe they have an extra large parcel where they're only using a portion of it and the rest of it still remains undeveloped, that I think that's where the trip up is.
Well, maybe we'll talk about this more offline, although maybe some of the public thinks this is a very interesting conversation, so I'm happy to continue if that's what you want. But I do have some further questions that I'll work with staff to try to find some answers here. Scott?
I just want to throw one thing in, and I get where you're talking about, and like this particular property, from what I looked at, it is draining into a field and out where we really don't have much for stormwater stuff. My other concern on this one is I don't believe they have sewer in that building.
They have a septic system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're building them for sewer that they're not using.
I don't believe they're being charged for sanitary sewer, but we'd have to have utilities confirm that.
It's on the bill.
Okay.
Just. That's all I got. I'll show it to you.
Okay, we have a motion to do something?
A second, yep.
Well, I guess we should probably clarify before we vote, because it was kind of a two-part motion, and then we were weren't sure if we could do the second part of suspending or waiving fees. So where are we at with the motion maker and the second on?
Well, I'll start with that. Let's just address the motion to have city council, or I'm sorry, to have city staff come back to city council with something. And then I think, Steph, were you going to check into if there's anything we can do about the fees in the interim, or is it just we can't because the ordinance is in place?
We can certainly look into that and
Okay.
see what options are available for that. I mean, again, this is something that was brought to my attention like hours before the meeting.
Right.
So I haven't had ample time to look at it. Public Information Officer, I do have the ordinance up. Are we only looking at storm sewer fees, or is it clear to other staff what fees we're looking at? Because I pulled up ordinance 31-152, that's what's referenced in the email that was placed before the council at the dais. So that's what I'm looking at now, but if it's more expansive than that, like we need a comprehensive review of the city fees that are imposed.
Well, as Alderman Samuelson just pointed out, like, I think there's going to be particular fees, right? Stormwater sewer, sanitary sewer, different things like that that are going to affect only a few customers on the fringes. So I think we would rightly look at all of them in this instance, wouldn't we? I mean, like Scott said, you know, he doesn't even have a sewer system there, and we're charging him for sewer. I know it's only $8 a month, but again, we're charging people for things we're not even providing for them, and so I think we need to look at all of those, in my opinion.
And I would defer, I mean, if council has guidance on how they want staff to do that analysis, or I mean, if city management has ideas on how that analysis can be conducted, I mean, city attorney's office is certainly willing to help work through these issues for sure.
Mr. Mayor, we'll take a look at it. The way I understand the motion, should it pass, is a directive to city staff to review instances where city services are being charged for but not utilized by the property owner. That's what I understand the motion and the intent to be. I don't know how we'll approach that, but I can work with staff to try and identify that and figure that out and provide some examples of how and why and when that happens, and then perhaps council can provide direction if they want that to continue or not. And then if the direction from council is they don't want that to continue, then we can work with the city attorney's office to draft the ordinances necessary to give us an ability to address those issues as we identify them.
So Michaela, what he said.
Yeah, I'll go back and watch the video tomorrow.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let us vote.
The motion passed unanimously.
Okay. Any other miscellaneous and discussion items? Seeing none, that brings us to item number 10.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we adjourn.
I don't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to say thank you, Ms. Olson, for your suggestion. And just to clarify that that is the email that I sent to you guys. To all of them, if you didn't receive it, I'd like to know. But I did send an email requesting a investigation through PCI. Thank you.
Get it?
That's good.
No.
Did anybody get it?
Did
You
anybody
got
get the email?
I didn't get it, no. I was going to.
So, Mr. Rice, we did not receive
Josiah,
it.
none of us got it.
Josiah, none of us got the email.
None of us received that email.
Or
We have
Josiah,
motion to
if you,
adjourn. Y'all in
Josiah, if
favor?
you want to even send it to the city clerk, she could disseminate it as well. Okay.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? We're adjourned.